2019 meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by posting written notice and agenda of this meeting on the bulletin board in the Municipal Building, 1000 Route 10, Township of Hanover, and by hand delivering, mailing, or faxing such notice and agenda to the following newspapers: Morris County's Daily Record, the Star Ledger, Hanover Eagle, and by filing same with the Township Clerk. May I have a roll call, please?
Committeeman Gallagher.
Here.
Committeeman Faramaska.
Here.
Committeeman Mahalko is excused and is on vacation. Committeeman Cahill.
Here.
And Mayor Francioli.
Here.
4 members in attendance, sir.
Thank you, Joe. Ladies and gentlemen, would you all please rise and join me with a pledge of allegiance to the flag? Please remain standing for a prayer, and at the same time, please remain for a moment of silence for the tragedies that we just suffered in El Paso and Daytona. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almighty God, we ask that you bless this governing body with an abundance of wisdom and understanding, so that every deliberation will result in actions which will promote the common good and the general welfare for all of the people of Hanover Township. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this time we have a few presentations we want to make. We know the bulk of all of you who have taken the time to come out here tonight is on a particular issue, and we'll be discussing that. Everyone will have an opportunity to be heard, trust us on that. But at this time we have a few duties we'd like to take care of. We have a presentation of a certificate of merit. Right, this is Caitlin?
Yep.
Okay, Caitlin Murray. Gold Award for the Scouts. Caitlin, where are you?
Not here.
Not here?
Not here.
Caitlin Murray,
No?
raise your hand.
No? All right. Accepting for Caitlin Murray will be the mayor. Okay, Caitlin, by the way, it's a very prestigious award that Caitlin has received. Similar in scope of an Eagle Scout, but this is a Girl Scout. And Township Committee wanted to recognize her tonight, so we were hoping she'd be here with us. But we'll put Caitlin on for another opportunity. We also have a presentation of certificates, merit, and T-shirts, with the old word on the T-shirts: don't wash them in hot water. Members of the Whippany Park girls softball team upon winning the North 2 Group 1 219 State Sectional Championship. Okay, and on that note, okay, Brian, I'm gonna. No, we're going to, no, that's going to be John. John, you want to do that with me?
Sure, absolutely.
All right, ladies, we have certificates and T-shirts, so we're going to do that.
T-shirts are on order.
On order? They're here, all right.
Oh, they're here.
They're here.
They're
Okay.
here?
Great.
All right, well, we have certificates up here?
John, the second pile. The second pile.
One, two.
Yep.
Okay, John, you want to read certificates? We're going to pull you up. When we pull you up, we'll give you a certificate, we're going to give you a T-shirt, and then you can stay with us for a while. We're going to take a group photo. Do you have the Okay. We have 2 players that aren't with us tonight. We're just going to hold those certificates.
Okay, I'll go.
Okay? Okay, Elisa Pavone? Okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Oh.
Thanks for clarifying. I thought it was reversed.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Right,
Well,
let me
we're
get the right
going
ones.
to read off the names, and if you're here, fine. Okay, Elisa Pavone is 1. Okay. All right. Evelyn Dente? No? Okay. Well, I got a lot of things to take home. Megan Gilbert? No? Giovanna? Okay. Katie Bruner.
I almost said, I know you did.
Victoria Sheridan. No? Samantha Williams. Paige Walsh. Getting there. Okay. Oh, Chloe Petro? Chloe? No? All right. Where's everybody?
Julia Swan.
Freddie can get some of
Julia
these
Swan?
certificates for us.
Brianna Swan. No, the Swans are not coming tonight. Okay. And Madeline Lake. Well, you're going to have the pictures taken with us. The coaches?
Why don't the coaches come up as well?
Yeah. Yes, certificates for them? Are these certificates for coaches? There you go.
There you go. Yeah, please take the shots.
You want to take these certificates? Yeah. Yeah, do that.
Oh, I'm not getting in there. Come on, Robert, get in there. Get in there.
Come on, you get it.
Oh, we all set? I want you to bring the camera.
Oh, thanks. Congratulations, ladies. Congratulations, Coach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Fred.
Be well.
Freddie, you sticking around?
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you do.
Thanks for that.
Take care. Thanks, guys.
Good morning, too.
Great job, guys. Thank you. Freddie has to rearrange his sock drawer.
Okay, now you have,
Public Safety Academy.
okay, that's going to be Brian.
That's Brian.
Okay. Okay. We also have a presentation tonight that we'd like to make. Is that on? Yeah. All right. Additionally, the additional presentation we have tonight, for the past few years, we've had a Public Safety Academy. We have a lot of youngsters that have gone through the Public Safety Academy, and that is supported by our police department, our fire department, our emergency management people who have put together a program for these youngsters. And at this time, we have graduates from this. And Brian, I'm going to ask you to
Thank you, Ron.
work on the graduates.
So rather than describe all of the really great things that they did, this was a 2-week program involving Morris County Sheriff, Hanover Township Police, Whippany Fire, Cedar Knolls Fire, our OEM department. These kids went through some real training, real public safety training. As I said, it's a 2-week program. So rather than try to attempt to describe everything that they've done, we have a video that was prepared that just a few minutes that kind of shows all the really cool things that they did. So, Jerry, if you wouldn't mind.
Talk amongst yourselves, we'll get it.
It's going to take a little longer. It's asking me to restart my computer.
Okay.
Can't do it?
Do you want to do that?
Well, I'll tell you what, why don't we do this? I know that Denise has a few words that she'd like to say.
Yeah.
And if you still don't have it going, we'll hand out the certificates, and if you still don't have it going, we won't watch it.
How's that sound, Jerry?
Okay. Okay, I'm right here.
Okay.
All right. Members of the committee, members of the public, family, and friends. My name is Denise Brennan, and I'm Superintendent of Recreation and Parks Administration for Hanover Township. And on behalf of the Hanover Township Recreation Commission, I would like to thank you for giving us this opportunity to bring forward this outstanding group of young men and women for your recognition. They have recently completed the 2019 Public Safety Academy, which is a program that is both intellectually challenging and physically rigorous. So as I know the committee knows, but perhaps the public doesn't know, the Youth Public Safety Academy won an award for programming excellence in 2017 from the New Jersey Parks and Recreation Association. As Committeeman Cahill said, it is a 2-week training program that's offered by the Hanover Township Recreation in partnership with the Hanover Township Police Department, the Hanover Township Office of Emergency Management, the Cedar Knolls Fire Department and First Aid Squad, and the Whippany Fire Department. We are very proud of their efforts, and we applaud their success. And I'm sure you would like to join us in that tonight after you meet these young men and women. And at this time, I'll turn this presentation back over to Committeeman Cahill and OEM Director Tom Quirk. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinnie. Sure, are you still working on that?
All right.
Okay. We have Robbie Gale.
Just stay up in front.
Ryan Coulson. Gabriel Quendo. Ravi Thacker. Christian Van Ness. Ethan Wong. Congratulations.
Got it, Jerry.
Chase Wright.
We'll go and take a photo with her. We do that.
We'll put it- we'll get
Michelle's
the
up.
Guinness.
Okay.
Look at that. Timing is everything.
Got it to go? Got it to go?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Watch the video first?
Then we're going to invite Brian.
Stay, we're gonna have a photo.
We're going to invite Heather
Yeah.
Dollars here. Freeholder Darling.
Jerry, no music, no sound, no popcorn?
The sounds of silence.
There we go. That was a door. These youngsters have gone through quite an experience through this whole program. There's no doubt about it. And they were taught by our professionals, our officers, both in fire, police, emergency management, etc. They went through a very comprehensive course. I congratulate them all. The committee does. This is second year, Tommy?
Yes.
We all get a little sample of what it's really like.
Sheriff Gannon was kind enough to send a lot of those skills kids as well.
Was he?
Yes.
We'll give credit to Sheriff Gannon as well. Took part in this program. Yeah. We have a freeholder with us tonight. Heather Darling's here. Heather, come on up front. Heather. We're going to take a photo together.
Hi, Heather, how are you? Here, want to sit in my seat? Good, stand up, take pictures, please.
Very good. So that was pretty much a 4-minute review. I'm sure that's going to get posted to one of our web properties, and then you'll be able to watch it actually with the music, which adds a little bit more to it. As you see, I mean, everything from Morrisville Training Academy, right, to Morrisville Bomb Squad, all kinds of great stuff. They really had a good experience. So congratulations to all the kids.
You made it.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Very good. Went to Bill.
Congratulations. Hey, congratulations. Great work. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Photo and you have everybody's way.
Any uniform officers that are here are welcome to join.
Where are you?
Jim, you might have to back up to Jefferson Road.
Some people take it off.
Did you get the taller people behind us? I don't know if I need Neil.
What do you need? What do you need? Stay right here. Stay right here. We can see over here.
Beautiful.
That's it. You have to be able to see my lens. Facing this photo. No blinking.
Jim, is it a gentleman? Thanks, guys. Very good. Very good.
Okay.
Congratulations, guys. Great job. We're going to open on this, report to the status of Township Board of Elections, and then we're going to go to the public?
Yep. That's what you got.
It's okay. We'll do this. All right, folks, we'll give our youngsters a chance to leave the room before we get on with the meeting. All right, so give them a second or two. At the same time, we can get some seats that opened up. Before this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Give them a chance to get going. Oh, you need more audio?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Are you just pumping up our sound system a little bit? How am I in the back of the room? You guys hear me? No. Need more volume? Can you crank it up?
Yeah. I don't want to do too much at once.
Yeah, we're getting some feedback. All right, how about the back of the room? More? More? All right, even more? All right.
Try it now.
Sound like a cellular phone commercial. Can you hear me now? In the back? Yes? No?
Try now.
All right, one more time. All right, everybody in the back? More? You want me to shout? I could do that too. We got this great sound system. How we doing? Let's see if we get a normal level. Can you hear me now? Now you can hear me. Out of the way. Okay, we're good. We're good. All right. Okay. All right, folks, we're going to go to the portion of the meeting that this is all about. All right, we're going to, Township Committee is going to go over the request that's been given to us by the Planning Board. But before we do that, we're going to explain most of it. No, all of it. And I'd like to open with a couple of brief remarks. There isn't anyone in this room that doesn't understand the issues that we've been having over the years with Pine Plaza, and I'm talking about the mall itself, not talking about the retailers. Pine Plaza has been an issue for Hanover Township, been an issue before our Economic Development Committee, it's been an issue before this committee, it's been an issue before the Planning Board. The issue is that the mall was not doing very well. It has not succeeded over the years, and our retailers have been paying the price for it over the years. We lost a great many good retailers out of that mall over time. They don't have a strong leader in that mall. They don't have a strong anchor store in that mall. And I'm not going to get into the retail issues of why they failed, but it's probably one of the reasons that the mall was failing. It has always been the township's desire to see that mall succeed. We have encouraged, most of my committeemen have reached out to various grocers, retailers, etc., to come into the mall as anchors and try and make it a success. We did not have much success in doing that. It got to the point now with the mall where the mall's failure was leading to tax appeals and other matters before the Township Committee, and it required action on our part. The action that we're taking on our part, it starts with the Planning Board, which has been examining the mall for years. It's one of about 8 properties in the township that we are looking at for redevelopment areas. Redevelopment area is not a dirty word. We're going to explain it to you. Now, the misunderstanding that I think has been going on to our community, and one that's been perpetuated by social networking. Social networking is wonderful. It gives us all an opportunity to talk to each other. It gives the general public a chance to give their opinions, share opinions, and quite honestly, it gives the public a chance to vent as well. We understand it. Most of us on the Township Committee, some of us share in social networking. Most of us read the social networking. At this point, I think we're most concerned, as are the retailers in that area, with the language that appeared in the condemnation language that appeared in the redevelopment zone. There's condemnation in the zone, there's zones without condemnation. Condemnation in this retail zone is because there are so many properties involved, and that is a requirement. We have another area in the town that's been brought to our attention through social networking called River Park. River Park is owned by one owner. The Pine Plaza is owned by one owner, but has several properties within the condemnation, within the zone, within the redevelopment zone. So at this point, let me make one statement, then I'm going to turn it over. I want our attorney to give you some opening remarks about what a redevelopment zone is all about, what the benefits are, what it can do to rejuvenate that area, what we're trying to do. He's going to do that with a presentation to you in about a moment. I want you to know this. From every township committeeman here, the idea of condemning the retailers in that mall was never part of the process that we wanted to approve. We had no intention of interfering with leases. We had no intention of interfering with private sales of private business between the tenants and the landowner. Had this property changed hands without a redevelopment zone, and let's assume that it did, where Pine Plaza would have sold to everybody else or somebody else other than this developer, the matter of the tenants would still have to be dealt with. The issue now becomes one of the language that's being used in the redevelopment zone, and that language contains the tool condemnation. On that note, Fred Sumerow, attorney for the Township Council. Fred, I'm going to turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Mayor, I also think that the governing body, when we discussed in executive session legal options earlier this evening, also came to a discussion that I think there's a direction that the governing body is going to take regarding the condemnation or non-condemnation, if I'm correct, and maybe you want to speak to that briefly before I get started, because like you said, that's one of the significant issues tonight, and I think there was ultimately a direction that it may go.
All right, council reminds me, we did, clearly we had a discussion during a legal session. Joe, you need some 3-in-1 oil on that door. Clearly we had a discussion in legal session about what the options were for a township committee, with or without the use of the word condemnation. We can take the recommendation of the planning board as it is right now, or we can modify that recommendation back to the planning board, whereby we remove the word condemnation from it. In either case, there are some definite advantages and definite disadvantages to the retailers. And again, council is going to explain that as well. But Fred, you want to explain the benefit of condemnation? Or
I think what we're going to do, Mayor, is there's been a lot of questions about affordable housing plan and what this all means, and there's been a lot of statements that the committee has forwarded to me to just give the opportunity for the public to understand some of the statements that have been made, so that we step back for a minute and go through the affordable housing process and the settlement. But I also believe, Mayor, to your point about whether the governing body would take the recommendation of the planning board, I'll go back through that. The planning board just, in this process, makes a determination if the property or the zone qualifies for an area in need of redevelopment, and the law requires, we'll go back through this in a few minutes, as to whether you have to disclose if there's a condemnation option or non-condemnation. The governing body has discussed this, and if I'm correct, the action the governing body would like to take later on this evening is for non-condemnation for the Pine Plaza site and the area. We'll go through how they come to this type of decision, but what that means is, just to start, the questions about whether there was never any type of agreement to take or interfere with any landlord-tenant relationships at Pine Plaza. Through this process, some things have come to light that were never the intentions of the governing body or the planning board. So with that, we discussed various legal options, and it's my understanding, if I'm correct, to the mayor and township committee, that later on this evening, for the record, we're going to clarify that and take action that it's a non-condemnation area. That condemnation is not, in fact, it was never intended to occur. We'll give you the reasons why it was part of consideration, but it wasn't for Pine Plaza. And the last thing the governing body wants to do is in any way get involved in any type of discussions between the landlord or future owner of Pine Plaza, and therefore they're going to go forward later this evening with a resolution, hopefully that would say non-condemnation. That's the consensus of the governing
That's
body
correct.
this evening. So that we're all clear about that, because that's the number one question that I was asked to look at. But I also would say that this has a lot to do with how did we get here, and we've been discussing this publicly since December, but it doesn't mean that everybody has to be here or was here since December. So the mayor and township committee asked me to just step back and explain to everybody how we got here and what it means, and maybe also address some of the concerns that have been raised out there. And I apologize if my back is to the governing body. So first, we from Fair Share, there's a settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing. And the reason why there's a settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing is back in 2014, the Supreme Court had the courts take over affordable housing and the compliance of affordable housing. And what that means is, if you as a municipality do not have a fair share of affordable housing available, what that means is a builder can come in and demand, override zoning, override your township committee, your planning board, and say, we want affordable housing here, we can help you. We'll build a high-rise development with market units to pay and supplement affordable units. So all municipalities, except for a handful, at least in Morris County, they want this certification from the court that says we're compliant with affordable housing. Because if you don't have it, you're at the mercy of a court and builders to develop your land for you. This governing body and other municipalities throughout the state have been in litigation for the last 6 years. Out of all the municipalities, there's been one trial. It was down in Mercer County. It went on for 3 months. There was one decision. It didn't go very well for the group of municipalities that participated, and there was an obligation that the court came up with, a number of units that a particular town had to come up with. So that decision and the special master in that court, that was forwarded up to Morris County, and at the time Judge Norgard took those numbers, took the facts of each particular town, and that same special master computed what every town's obligation would be. Now, you could go to trial and you could challenge that, but that's the one decision out there. The experts that were involved and all of the testimony, the court said, this is what you're faced with. So to take a look, here's our obligation. It was 897 units for this third round of affordable units. Looking at some of our neighbors like East Hanover, Montville, Denville, Roxbury, like Denville and Roxbury, they haven't resolved yet. There's still negotiations. There's the possibility of trial. But for some of our communities, 897 units. What does 897 affordable units mean? It transfers to this. You have builders, and the courts will say, for every affordable housing unit that a builder builds, that builder is entitled to 4 market units, because that helps supplement and pay for affordable housing. So that translates, when you give one affordable unit for 4 market units, and we have an obligation of 897, that means, in this case, Hanover Township has been faced with finding 4,485 units. That's 897 affordable units, and a developer at a 4-to-1 ratio would say, I need 3,500 market units. This governing body for the last 4 years has been taxed with trying to figure out how to solve 4,485 units without sprawl, without it coming to everyone's backyard, and without losing compliance with the court and having the court just put affordable housing throughout the community. So with that challenge, the possible outcome at 4,400 units, if they're all single-family homes, we know single-family homes are going to have 4 or 5 bedrooms. We're faced with 20,182 bedrooms. That's the obligation at 897. As I said, one case. It didn't go well. That's what this is generated from throughout the state. So the options to the township. First, the township could say, we want out. We don't really care what the court says. We're not going to comply with this. But that means the court takes over. The master plan has no validity. High-rise developments possible at any location. And let's look at some of the 2 significant settlements. River Park has over 80 acres in size. River Park's build-out is 1,600 homes. Pine Plaza's build-out, 400 homes. There are settlements throughout the state and some of your neighbors that's the type of density that actually came about in these cases. So the next choice is, well, you look at, if we opt out, along those lines, what's the vulnerability to Hanover? Because there's towns in Sussex County that say we really don't care. Come and build. Let's have a builder come in. But there's not this. Desirability. There's a low tax rate for Hanover Township, one of the lowest in the county. A strong rateable base, excellent schools, safe community. All the makeups and infrastructure for a developer to come in and say, I want to build here, it's worth it. So it really eliminates the idea of opting out. The other choices are you either try to settle or you go to trial. If you go to trial, fair shares number was up over 1,000. So it's a high risk if you lose. So for 2 years, we negotiated. And the Township Committee came up with this settlement that reduces the court obligation that towns have to meet of $897. Because we settled and we came up with a plan, the obligation was only 550 units. What that means, that reduction of 357 units saves us 1,428 market units. It saves us bedrooms of over 6,000 because now the obligation isn't to meet 897, it's to meet 550 because it's part of a plan and a settlement. Significant consideration versus a trial or opting out. Now, as part of the settlement, there's really two significant settlements. First is Pine Plaza, and again, condemnation is not an option. There was a settlement with Pine Plaza, and part of that settlement, there would be 130 townhomes built as you walk, although there isn't a concept plan yet, and I want to make it clear, all of this is a settlement. There will have to be zoning, there will be site plans, there will be public notice, there will be public hearings, there will be discussion about things like access, traffic, stormwater management, all of those things. Landscaping, all those things still have to go forward. The only obligation of the township is to give an opportunity for these developments. If they don't happen, that's okay. If they happen, well, we've tried to limit it to certain things. So Pine Plaza is 130 townhomes. It has 60 senior units. That's 36% of the development is affordable. All the way down to 2 days before the settlement, this governing body got a pushback from 150 to 130 units and said take it or leave it. And 36%, I have not seen 36% as a set-aside. I don't believe anywhere in the county, unless somebody came in and just as a affordable housing group, a nonprofit, built something. And there'd be 70,000 square feet of commercial space. Now, the thing about Pine Plaza is the affordable units, I got a lot of questions asked, well, what kind of affordable housing is it going to be? Well, at Pine Plaza, there's 60, and all 60 are senior, age-restricted, affordable units for 30 years. They can't charge market rent. They look for seniors who have certain income limitations, and that's the only housing, as far as affordables, concerned on the property. And I'll go back to that and say, with respect to the seniors, Hanover Township has one of the highest population of seniors in the county. So that was a big consideration of the governing body. And the 60 units, the other part that's so important, Joe Giorgio and I were making cold calls to various locations throughout the township to see where we could find senior housing. And what we learned was a lot of the market unit senior housing, seniors, everyone's healthier and they live longer. They were going from market units and they couldn't find affordable units. They ran out of money. They were healthy, they were living longer, and we couldn't find affordable units. So at Pine Plaza, it was very important to have 60 all in one building senior units. River Park is the second project. It's been dormant since the 1980s. It was the former Whippany Paperboard site. Here, as I mentioned, this is a large tract of land. It has some environmental issues to still address as far as the cleanup over the years, but the settlement for River Park was 1 and 2 bedroom units and the affordable units of 2 and 3 bedrooms would be 72 bedrooms, 73 bedrooms. And what you're seeing here is the trend and the settlement negotiations weren't the 4.5 bedrooms. It was, let's really target what would be what's needed in the township, and if we have to do this, let's also target so that we don't drain our infrastructures and candidly other infrastructures, roads, schools, etc. There's 73 bedroom homes that are affordable. But the rest of the project, 93% of the project, are 1 and 2 bedroom homes. Everything that we've gleaned throughout this project, the target is what we say the bookends. It's the couples or families that are starting out until they grow, and it's those who have retired and want to stay in Hanover Township. So that's for the 1 and 2 bedrooms. And of course, it's going to be a town center. And the town center is 40 to 80,000 square feet of commercial space that's going to be developed, because one of the things the committee wanted was a sense of place in the township for restaurants and shops, not big box, because that's even in the actual settlement, that's not permitted. So that's the River Park overview. Some of the questions that have come up that have been sent back to me from the Township Committee that they've read on social media and things are such as this. The settlement agreements, do they include language where the town is directed to take both residential and commercial properties through condemnation? The answer to that question is there's only one place in all of this that's a consideration, and that is there's a Midas shop on Route 10 that we're all familiar with. There's a consideration there that be part of this redevelopment. And the reason why that's in there is because it really isn't that consistent with the goals and what may happen. Nothing against Midas. It just isn't going to fit well because the Midas is going to be right next to the senior housing. So what the Township Committee did was they negotiated and said, look, we want you to, whoever develops the site at Pine Plaza, we want you to acquire by arm's length transaction the Midas. Buy the lease, buy the property, so that, and it will not be developed for residential use. It would be a commercial type space, but it would be more, it would blend more with the senior housing as opposed to what's there now. So as part of that, what if the developer says, well, I can't make a deal? And the Township Committee said, then what we'll do is we will use, if necessary, and if that's really our will, the power of eminent domain to acquire that property. The property owner would get fair market value. The lease and the leaseholder would be relocated. All those costs would be paid. There'd be an appraisal, a negotiation, and that property would then be moved. And it would then be developed consistent with Pine Plaza. But that is all at the obligation of the developer. That developer must pay all of the costs, but they can't walk away and say, I can't buy the Midas, or I offered the Midas a property price and said, take it or leave it. So that's why there is one property in all this that does have some aspect of the potential for eminent domain, and that's the Midas. The rest of the agreements do not call for condemnation of any property. No residential, no other businesses, and no other leaseholds. So, again, no other properties for eminent domain. Is Pine Plaza going to be tax-free for 30 years? The answer is yes. No, I just wanted to see if anybody... Of course it's not. It's not. No. The answer is no. Absolutely not. I want to go over this because it's important. There is one separate agreement with respect to taxes at Pine Plaza, and it relates to the senior apartments. The 60 senior apartments, you can only generate a certain amount of value in rent when they're age restricted and the rent is capped at a certain amount of money. So as part of the incentive, that 60 senior unit apartments will be subject to a separate type of tax agreement. They will pay taxes to the municipality. The rest of Pine Plaza pays, there's no other deal with the rest of however it's developed, residential or commercial. So those senior apartments, they don't generate the type of things on the infrastructure or the schools that are going to be a concern. But so that's the arrangement for Pine Plaza. There's nothing else with respect to Pine Plaza. It'll be taxed just like any other property in the township. Will the township have to provide and pay services such as snow removal and sanitation pickup, because now we're going to have residential properties on River Park and on Pine Plaza? And it's no. The township negotiated that this proposal, even though residential properties, they have the right, and so do condominium associations, homeowners associations have the right for municipal services such as sanitation, snow removal, things of that nature. We negotiated that there would be no additional expenditures or services of the township. Both River Park and Pine Plaza agreed to that. One of the things we got back was, we don't know if this is actually legal. And we said, it is. It's in the contract, and we want you to pay. They have to pay for it. It's the developer has to pay for this. They've agreed to it, and it's part of the settlement. Will there be any additional affordable housing at Pine Plaza? The answer is no. This agreement with Pine Plaza, it limits the residential development to the 130 units. Now, every deal that's made right now states specifically, like the Pine Plaza deal says, it's 130 units, no more residential. So if Pine Plaza comes back and says, I can't develop, I'd like more units, the answer is no, we have an agreement to that effect. What's the impact on Pine Plaza? And actually, this is on River Park. I made a mistake. With respect to the Eden Lane condominiums. Because residents of Eden Lane have asked, what does this mean to us? Well, what it means is, if you're living over on the Eden Lane condominiums, there was an approval for River Park to develop over 400,000 square feet of an industrial flex building, which meant truck traffic, which was an enormous dispute with the township because we didn't want truck traffic on Eden Lane. It would have to be brought in somewhere off of Jefferson Road, but there was an approval by the township for that site for that type of development. As part of this settlement, that approval is gone. It is stipulated by the parties that the settlement states the approvals at River Park are null and void with respect to that truck traffic. That's important if you're in Eden Lane living across the street. There will be no commercial development in the front of River Park. One of the things is there is a zone that will be created that will likely permit River Park, as part of a town center, to have amenities such as a hotel. But the hotel will not be built where it would affect the viewscape of residents on Eden Lane. It would be inside of the development. The only type of development that is potential on River Park in the front along Eden Lane would be light commercial, like a coffee shop and things like that, which make those type of amenities also available to the residents in the area. There's no big box stores or anchor stores that can be developed. What about the impact with respect to the residents of Oak Ridge? Well, it's significant here too. We have a slope that's between the River Park property and the Oak Ridge condominiums that is in dire need of attention. It's a actual hazard from a standpoint of for potential for flooding. It's eroded to the point where it needs immediate attention. It's owned by the county. What this governing body negotiated with River Park is that River Park would acquire this property from the county, and River Park would take care of and repair at their cost this slope to the level of acceptance and review of the DEP standards. That's a benefit for the residents at Oak Ridge. It's a benefit to the township. Certainly it makes River Park a better participant in this project. Important to note, this isn't the type of deal where the township committee said, all right, build everything, River Park, and then make sure you do that. Before any building permits can be issued, River Park has to take care of this. So that's important for residents that are Oak Ridge. And then what about Legion Place? Because both of these significant settlements, they're projects that already have existed, they're sites that have had a history, but Legion Place is sandwiched between. Well, it was very important to the township committee that there be no development at the end of at Legion Place. Now, first I want to say, for Pine Plaza, right now, if you are on Legion Place, behind you is the back of these commercial establishments. Could be dumpsters, some limited parking, the back. What the future holds is that would be the brick face townhomes and residential development with the appropriate setbacks and planning and notice and hearing, but it would not be commercial development along the boundaries of Legion Place. It would call for appropriate landscaping, some low-level architecture and brick walls that would be installed, things of that nature. And again, we don't have a site plan, but those are the things we will look for, and those are the things that will be discussed. And as far as River Park's concerned, River Park owns property at the end of Legion Place. And it became very important to the Township Committee that that property, which in the past was slated for some type of residential development, it was actually going to be an affordable housing site. Well, under this settlement, River Parks agreed, and it's in the actual documents, there'll be no development along Legion Place in this settlement, in any rezoning that comes up, or any site plans. Now, can't say this is forever. This is our third round obligation. You can't take land from these developers, but you can also say, this is the way this is going to work. And for River Park and for Legion Place, we feel as though this was significant because they had development up on Legion Place that they had proposed if we went forward and things in court didn't go as well as would be expected. The additional benefits of the settlement, Hanover retains its zoning rights. No obligation to rezone any properties for residential development. There will be 2 overlay zones. That's part of a settlement of fair share housing that all municipalities go through. There'll be areas such as, I think we've looked at maybe one of the recycling or junkyards as an overlay if it ever gets redeveloped. But there'll be no pocket developments. Township has such development pressures that we've all seen in someone's backyard, a small tract of land, and a developer come in and say, I want to build as much density as I can fit in on this particular tract. What this means, the governing body can say no. We have no obligation to rezone. We are protected through 2025, and the next round starts in 2025. Believe me when I tell you, the governing body already has ideas how to protect itself down the road, but that goes through 2050. I'll be very happy if we're all here to talk about it, but that's the next round. Also, it minimizes the number of affordable units, as we discussed, from the 897 to 550, reduces bedrooms by 6,000, which were at risk because of the type of settlement that's been yielded. And again, 93% of River Park and Pine Plaza are 1- and 2-bedroom units, which also minimizes some of the drain on the infrastructure. And we talked about the bookenders as well, as that's the target. So what about this condemnation zone, which I think the mayor and township committee already said tonight how it's going to be addressed. But how did it come about? Well, as I said, the township felt the Midas would not fit well next to the senior housing. So the township made a deal where the developer would have to pay all costs. We don't want to hear you can't make a deal, and have the right, if need be, it for condemnation, because it was that important. So, but in order to do that, in this process of declaring an area in need of redevelopment, which is just a development tool to give you, there's still zoning and all the things that come with zoning, but it gives you certain flexibility to move things along. You have to designate right up front if the area in need of redevelopment is condemnation or non-condemnation. This was a law change in 2013. So when we started this process, it was really my recommendation that we have, just for the Midas, you really need to include that option for the Pine Plaza area, that you have the option for redevelopment and condemnation. What we've since found out in many different ways is that potentially the developer is using that to say, this gives me a certain amount of negotiation position with business owners. We've also found out that the governing body, we knew the governing body had no intention that there was going to be any type of threat or utilization of condemnation on Pine Plaza or any other property. Did want to have a discussion with the Midas. But so it changed the way the governing body would look at this, because the goal is not to interfere with those relationships. Keeping in mind, though, when with condemnation, you do have certain rights. And not that the governing body has any plans or a commitment in any way to condemn. If this can't be worked out with Pine Plaza business owners and the owner, then that's a private matter. That's not for the township to be concerned about. We are not obligated to take any action. But the redevelopment designation is the first of many steps, and it contains Pine Plaza. But there, as I said, there's no plans to condemn or a commitment to condemn any other property. That being said, if the governing body tonight continues on this path and takes the non-condemnation route that the mayor talked about, that doesn't mean, with respect to Midas, that the governing body may not come back. They may come back and revisit Midas later on, looking at how things ultimately evolve. But the point is, the governing body does not want to interfere, and that was never the intention, to interfere with any business relationships. So, same thing, without the designation, the township now has a little bit of a risk that there could be a delay with respect to Midas, and yet the seniors, it's critical that that's part of the first phase. That development can still go ahead. That whole first phase of Pine Plaza will ultimately be, after the appropriate site plans, will be probably residential housing on the left side of Pine Plaza as you face it from Route 10. So from a standpoint of businesses, that's not going to interfere with any of the businesses that are there right now. Again, that's a private matter for whoever the owner or developer is. But for right now, that's the direction I believe the governing body is going to go based on what they've heard and some of the facts that have changed. So in conclusion, the Township Committee, the settlement, it really minimized the exposure to the township throughout the municipality, and it placed the most significant aspects of the settlements and development in places that are already either developed, they're in need of redevelopment, there's the appropriate space for such redevelopment, and took it out of essentially other pocket type of developments within the community. So it really was to address the senior population, because same thing at River Park. 1 and 2 bedroom type units are targeted to also attract seniors to stay in town. It's one of the biggest things that the Township Committee in this process was concerned about. Let's have that opportunity to make sure that's addressed. And, in addition, with respect to the conclusion, the settlement only refers to the possible acquisition of Midas. Hopefully that dispels any kind of rumors that other businesses are going to be taken or could be acquired. It's just not correct. We're anywhere near that type of discussion, and it's not an obligation of the township. The township is, by doing this, will be compliant with its affordable housing obligation. That protects all of us. And again, as I said, the senior population is accounted for. So the plan is centered on 2 existing sites. And again, there's no pocket or high-rise type of developments that we run the risk to deal with.
Yeah. Fred, thank you. Thank you, Fred. We're going to open the floor in a little bit, and I'm going to give you a few guidelines, because there's so many people that would like to address the committee, and we want to give everybody an opportunity to do that. So please bear with us. But you heard council mention the lieu of taxes on the seniors that are age-restricted development. That's known as a pilot. You probably heard some of this through social networks as well. A pilot is payment in lieu of taxes. That lets the developer give the monies that would be equal to the taxes to the township, and the township decides which other government agencies get that money. Education, county, fire, municipal, etc. We control that. There's a big concern that if we get that kind of money on a pilot, education will come up with no money. Now, number one, regardless...
Right, and Mayor, I just want to interject one thing.
Sure.
So we covered all the material issues. For River Park, there's a cleanup there, there's this site remediation, and we negotiated we wanted less units by a tune of about 400. So as part of that, River Park has a limited pilot for the residential, not for the commercial.
Yeah.
And to the mayor's point, it's for another day. We're a ways away from ever really having to address that at the moment. But how the Township Committee wants the revenue to be utilized. There's ways. You could say it depends on how many school children it would involve or what the cost would be demonstrated by the Board of Education, but there is one there that I just wanted to mention.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is that the schools could even benefit from a pilot because we have the discretion to give even more dollars than they would normally get from the taxes on the property. And why do we have that discretion? Because if we're not giving that portion to the county, we're not giving that portion to other agencies, we can change the proportions that education gets. So we will control that. That's in your hands and our hands. That's the way the pilot works. The summation that Council just gave you is a summation that goes back to 1980. The fair share housing he keeps mentioning is known as COA. You know it as Council of Affordable Housing. We've gone through 4 rounds of COA. All towns have gone through this. We have fought like hell with COA to get the best deals that we can possibly get, and I'm really proud of this Township Committee and the subcommittee that worked on this that got us the deal that we got on this particular one. It's probably one of the best of the county, Fred, as far as settlements are concerned.
It's a lot more favorable when you look at what some other communities, and we have those numbers, are going through. I think under the circumstances, Hanover Township, and with all the development pressures, has done extremely well to protect itself under the circumstances.
Did very well. All right, folks, what we're going to do is this. We had a sign-up sheet. Thank you very much. Everyone signed up. I will tell you that we have 26 speakers. Please bear with us. We are going to give you time at the podium. That time will be 4 minutes. You will address all your questions to the chair, please. Please refrain from any outbreaks of applause or anything else like that. I'm sure you're all encouraged about some of the answers you'll get, probably discouraged about some of the other answers you'll get. Direct all your questions to the chair, and I will redirect those to the proper professionals that we have with us. We have our planners with us. We have counsel with us. You'll get the answers that you need. The first one that has been signed up on the sheet is Peter Chen. Peter, are you here? Peter, go ahead. Time starts when you get to the podium, giving us your name and full address for the record.
Go slow, I heard. Do I just speak right away, or?
Just your name and address for the record first.
Name and address. Okay, Peter Chen.
Peter, bring up that mic.
Yes. Peter Chen, C-H-E-N. Address 22 Amelia Street in North Caldwell, New Jersey. Okay. Greetings. I'm honored to be able to come here and speak on behalf of Nikko Japanese restaurant. In fact, my dad is one of the partners, and because of some perhaps language limitations, they've thoughtfully written down some words that I think is very meaningful. So I'm here to help represent and read what they've written. Greetings, Mr. Mayor and committees of the board. I am one of the members, well, they wrote this. I'm one of the members at Nikko Japanese Restaurant, and we have worked hard to make Nikko what it is today, a well-known restaurant that helps Hanover and Whippany shine. On eBay, you can find a popular DK publisher's book on sushi called Sushi Taste and Technique. Anyone have this? Okay. But you can find it online. This 248-page book contains a directory of notable sushi restaurants around the world, including in Australia, Canada, Britain, and the United States. Only 24 were selected in the U.S. There are 3 in NYC, New York City, and 1 in New Jersey, which is Nikko. Side note, as I looked at this, which my father had, among those 3 that are in New York City, one of them is Nobu. All right, so many of us, or I have, but he's quite famous, this Nobu restaurant in New York City. So it's pretty amazing that New Jersey was selected to be on this list, and this is Nikko, right next door almost. Continuing with the letter. We, the partners, we have worked hard in this township to make Hanover glorious. And then there's a few stories that they wanted to share. For example, someone from Japan came to Edison, New Jersey to meet with a friend, and this Japanese visitor insisted on eating at Nikko. People from California came to the Brunswick area to find their friends, and the Californian guests, they requested to eat at Nikko. People from all over the world stay at the Sheraton Hotel in Parsippany, and they asked the hotel to drive them over to Nikko for meals. By the way, this is under 3 minutes. I timed it, so. One last story. More than 30 people from a Boston church came to Newark to see the cherry blossoms, and they especially wanted to dine at Nico. And so we have worked hard to make Nico become a local treasure of Hanover. As a result, Whippany has become one of the best Japanese restaurants in New Jersey, and it is apparently even known by some around the world. And so should it not be protected and cherished rather than removed? Is the township really going to tear down one of the best Japanese restaurants in the state? Nico Japanese Restaurant has made many foreigners as well as local people more aware of Hanover and Whippany. The wonderful food and the beautiful appearance of the Japanese courtyard have been praised by many guests. This 30-year-old restaurant has accompanied many people growing up through 3 decades. And as we are seeing, the former children are now taking their children to eat at Nico. And those who move to other states, they come back wanting to visit and dine at Nico. So if Nico is taken away from us, there will be many people asking, what is the reason for doing so? After all, Nico is a successful business. It is not a rundown property. But perhaps the most important is that it is our livelihood. And so we thank you for listening from the partners at Nico.
And Mr. Chen?
4
Mr.
minutes.
Chen, just so you know, based on the conversation earlier tonight, Nico's was never part of a plan for the Township Committee. And after they take the vote tonight that they've discussed they're going to take, it's not even a possibility, okay? So for that standpoint, you won't have to have any kind of concerns, because that's what the Township...
That was one of them. Thank you.
Okay, John Tang. John, are you here? Folks, I'm just going to remind you, if your questions are going to be the same as questions that have been asked and answered, we're going to ask you to relieve the podium or ask another question. But John, go ahead.
Okay. My name is John Tan. I live in 1001 Meadowbrook Court. I'm one of the partners of Nico Restaurant. Mr. Peter Chen speaks well about our worldwide famous Japanese restaurant, but since there's no further concern, so I will not make further comments, but I will appreciate you continue to come to our restaurant. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Ron, we might have to order some takeout in a little while.
Yeah, the committee's looking for some takeout, John. Okay. Stephanie, help me.
Man? Stephanie
Mann? Oh, Stephen.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. I apologize. Go ahead, Stephen. Go ahead.
I wanted to, Stefano Mari. Steve.
Your
Mari.
address, please.
Name and address.
Okay.
Your name and address.
870 Route 10 West, 3 Golf Lane, Succasunna.
Succasunna?
Yeah.
Okay.
I live across the street from Pinebrook Plaza. Is it Pinebrook Plaza?
Pine Plaza, yeah.
I'm trying to develop my property.
Okay. Which property is that, Steve?
I have two lots, and I got together with my 2 neighbors, and we're trying to, what we think is good for development is put a strip mall there. Easy in, easy out. That's what I'm trying to do.
Is that the property? I don't want to take your time up, and I don't want to add to this. But just for clarification, is that the property between Grande? Are those the houses between?
No, it's south of Bogies. There's 3 houses. There's 3 houses left.
Yeah.
On Route 10 West.
Right.
There's 3.
My suggestion.
So if you do
tonight,
put
Stephen, for tonight, Stephen, my suggestion is that you address it to the administrator, who will give your comments to the planning board for consideration on the zoning. We're looking at that corner, which is Bogies, some property that we own and property that's owned by another owner.
You own Bogies?
We don't own Bogies, but we own the property in between.
Hardy's, the former Hardy property.
Yeah. The former Harding property is now owned by the township. In between Bogies, there's 3 lots there. But in any event, to answer you, my suggestion is, certainly for this tonight, when we're trying to talk about Pine Plaza, is get your comments in a brief letter to the administrator, direct it to the planning board, asking him to review the zone and see what we can possibly do. What the planning board does is have you come in.
If you're going to put 160 units, across the street from my house, for me, I mean, my traffic is crazy.
Understood.
It would be beneficial for the township.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay. Again, if you, I recommend you get a comment to the administrator, Joe Giorgio. You do that, we'll follow through. Okay, next on our list, you're going to have to help me with the right. Gerald Gator?
Gerald Merston? Are we pronouncing that correctly?
Is that right?
Yeah.
If you play numbers, Gerald, you're number 4. Go ahead.
Gerald Merston, 37 Bohemians Terrace, Whippany. Does anybody have any idea as to what the time frame is for the approvals and then construction?
Time frame, Fred, on
Yeah, I would think for Pine Plaza, I would think it would be a year from now by the time construction starts, somewhere close to a year.
Close to a year?
River Park has, a different type of agenda and different things they have to do. So that may be, I'm just estimating, that would probably be over 2 years for construction to begin. But again, I'm just estimating. River Park's longer out than what I would see for Pine Plaza.
Thank you, Fred. Okay. Tracy Brown. Tracy, you here? There you go.
So, good evening. Tracy Brown, 4 Apple Tree Lane. Again, I just want to thank the committee for taking the time to pull this together tonight and offer the presentation. With a lot of the town chatter, throughout the neighborhoods and social media, obviously my main goal tonight was really to come tonight to learn and to be educated. So I appreciate, the presentation and the information. I guess, and actually in all of your efforts in trying to manage the mandates that we're under, as effectively as we can. I guess my question, we talked about 2 specific areas of the town tonight, and as we know, there's much more development going on in our areas and surrounding areas, but we haven't talked about infrastructure. So roads, traffic, police officers expanding, fire department expanding, schools. So I guess my question is, what's being done to address that as a whole? We have, American Way, we have Hanover Ave, we have new restaurants going on Route 10. I think everybody can attest to the increased traffic. So I guess my question is, how are we addressing that? And could that be put back on the developers also?
Is our planner, where are we? Is Paul here or no?
Well, that's Blaze.
Can you address that or no? I can tell you this. Your township committee, this town, and other communities, towns have gotten together, mayors and councils, to discuss a regional issue. Regional issue is traffic. Regional issue is the impacts of all of this co-development, fair share housing on us all. Nobody's watching this. And we all have to share in what the developments are. We met last week, 7 mayors, to discuss this immediate area. Do we have solutions for you? The immediate solution Hanover is going to use is to make the developers improve off-site improvements to what they're doing, whether it's road widening, whether it's other types of improvements that we'll have to take a look at. Part of the site plan approval process is they're probably going to have to submit traffic information.
Yes.
And like information to us to see what the impacts are, Fred?
Yes, and to Tracy's question, I mean, the most the township committee could do this far, and it was as far as we could go as far as the sanitation, snow removal, things like that. Also, like at River Park, there's discussion about having the possibility of a police substation was discussed. Now, I know that doesn't fully answer your question because that may be a drain, but on the other hand, these were sites that, like Pine Plaza, had already been developed, and the Township Committee probably has, down the road, certainly, their work cut out for them, but at the same time, they're addressing an ordinance that's on for introduction tonight, because not everybody is as difficult or as time-consuming as other locations, but there's some locations in town that has a very high incident of police calls. And it could be a hotel, it could be, I don't want to say specifically, but the chief of police has come forward and working with Rob Rossmeisel of our office to the Township Committee's directive, we want to find a way to get our cost under control for those taxpayers who go above and beyond. So there's an ordinance tonight, it's very unique, we only have seen it in one other location in the state, about the number of calls and complaints and incidents that the police get in a 60-day period. And this is Chief Roddy, as I said, is really behind this, so that either these establishments stop being such a drain on the township, or they're going to start paying to the township to subsidize or pay for additional services that we'll need. So that's on for tonight. So those type of things have been really discussed, but that's we all know where the hot spots are, and that's going to be accounted for.
Yeah, like I said, I would say that, and the roads, the traffic is obviously a major concern, whether it be Route 10 or just in the residential areas, and obviously bring more people in, more stores, more commercial, coffee shops, if you will. We're only going to increase the traffic, and it doesn't seem that anything's ever done to try to address that. And again, I don't know if it can be put back on the builders or not in any way, shape, or form for whining, paying for more police officers or so forth, but obviously there's going to become a greater need the more populated the township becomes. So again, I'm sure you guys, do look at it, but I would implore you to continue to do so, and anything that you have leverage to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Tracy, thank you. Chip?
I would respect to pass on that.
He's going to pass up. He said he's going to pass up.
Yeah? Mention that.
Yeah. So,
Okay, is he here?
yeah, he's passing up. He's not going to speak.
Yeah? You sure?
Okay. Thank you.
All right. I'm not coming back to you.
Thank you, Chip.
All right. All right. Carol Flanagan, where are you?
Okay, next.
Okay. Oh, boy. Wow. All right, okay. Oh, Mary Lou White. Mary Lou? Hey, oh, whoa. Oh, macro. Linda Oakes. Linda.
Sorry. Sorry.
That's okay. You get there 4 minutes. So you're up to 12.
I get a half hour? Oh my gosh. That's all. Okay. Well, I had some stuff written out and...
Your name and address again
sorry.
so we can record
Linda
it.
Oakes, 39 Courtright Road in Whippany.
Thank you.
I had some stuff written out, and thanks to your presentation and some previous people, there's been some questions answered, but I have less questions than just basically a statement, but I understand that there's a need and an obligation for the affordable housing, and I have no disagreement with the areas of town that the council has selected for redevelopment. However, some of my concerns are that the vast majority of all of the, the units being offered are rentals and not ownership. I think there's a pride in ownership. I think there's taxes in ownership. I think that, seniors want to sell their houses and own something versus rent. And I think that, young people and families want the opportunity to start out owning something, not particularly renting something. I have specific concerns for all of the individual things. Pine Plaza, obviously the condemnation process, which you guys have already discussed, and the tax abatements. River Park, I have more concerns. These are all rentals, so there's no ownership here. I also have a concern with the extended stay hotel that's on the settlement agreement. It says 7 stories. I don't know if that's still in the thing, or you were talking about high-rises. I don't know if that qualifies or not. But I would have questions that, do our fire trucks have the capacity to put out a fire in a 7-story building? Would there be 24-hour security at this apartment complex? Because that's what it is. It's not owners. And an extended stay hotel. How is this extended stay hotel going to differ than the other 2 hotels in town that are already riddled with crime and drugs? Is anybody worried about the safety of the surrounding area, including Patriots Path and the Central Park, with the 7-story extended stay hotel across the street? Have there been any environmental studies done here to see if there will be any impact on the area with flooding due to concreting what is now mostly permeable ground? I also have an issue with the tax abatement. The airport road, which nobody is talking about tonight, but there is a settlement agreement that I saw. I do have a lot of the same environmental concerns and the fact that they're all rental agreements versus purchasing, minus the hotel, of course. So I won't repeat that. I think these developments are going to impact our schools, our class sizes, our emergency services, and our roads. Nowhere in any of the contracts are there any givebacks to the town in the form of monies for upgrading schools. Sorry, I lost my place. Roads, or hiring more police or full-time fire department. And we're going to need all of this. I'm a little concerned that there's been not very good transparency from our town. I think that we should be talking more to seniors and see what they need. Do we only want 60 senior rentals and nothing that our aging population has asked for and continues to want? With pilot programs and tax abatements in place, who's going to be paying for all of this? You did explain how that works, but are you going to put in writing before you agree to this that you're going to give 50% of it to the schools? Or, you guys are left making that decision, and as taxpayers are left holding the bag. I purchased a home in Hanover, and I put a considerable amount of money into that home, upgrading it, because of the low taxes and the good property values. I want my children to have a good quality of life in a small, safe community with good schools and small classes. How is this tax abatement and development going to affect my family? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I could just say to Ms. Oates, I mean, a lot of the points you made are very relevant, and they are challenges. First, I think the governing body wishes they could legally assess for, whether it be schools or first responders in these agreements. We can't. We're not permitted to do so. It would be an illegal agreement. With respect to the rentals, totally understand your point, because there's that pride of home ownership. But with respect to the rentals, the one thing you need to know is that the way that the law is and this system works right now, which really we won't get into how it needs to be addressed, but you get twice the amount, you get a bonus for rentals. You get a bonus for affordable units, so you could build less units if they're rentals. So there's some incentive there to do that, and fortunately, with respect to the River Park project, although you can never guarantee it, but this is a developer that has represented and demonstrated a track record that they hold on, they manage, they don't sell. They develop a very specific way to take care of these units for the long haul. This is it's been their track record now that they passed this down through the new family, which has been in town now for about 30 years. But that's something, and they are responsible for the management and the upkeep. And as far as the 7 stories, all that is still going to go through the site plan approval process. And if it's determined that that's not safe or there's a concern, then I can't see it being 7 stories, but I can't make that guarantee. It's not an approval. It's what is at least a concept right now.
Our fire apparatus, Fred, on that note, our fire apparatus, when the Marriott went in, which is 7 stories, was used as an example to reach the highest point of that, and and we were satisfied that it does.
You're right.
From a fire suppression standpoint. Gary, you passing up?
Believe it or not, yes.
Wow.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Trish Martin. Trish? Are you with us?
Yes.
There you go.
Hi.
Okay. Name and address. Go ahead.
Trish Martin, 21 Salem Drive North in Whippany. All right, so a lot of good points have been made, questions have been asked. While I don't want to speak for many, I do get a general feeling that people are upset with a lack of transparency. People think that this has been going on in back rooms. There's a particular developer in our town who seems to get whatever he wants. So I think that's something that you should know as the council, that there are ways to share information, and perhaps it would behoove you to use those ways to share more information to help people understand better, so that we don't have this kind of outcry all at once. Whippany is sort of a vortex, right? We grow up here, we want to run away, and then we go to buy a house and we're like, no, really, we need to live in Whippany with somebody that we went to high school with. It happens a lot. It's the Whippany vortex. We wind up dating and marrying and coming back. I did that. So all of this development, and now I have a better understanding of the reason for it all being residential, but how is this benefiting all the people who live here already, other than what we're avoiding? But I think my question is, what am I as a resident getting out of this, other than more traffic, potentially more crime, somewhat of a less safe feel to our town? We already have transients. If we're adding another hotel, I'm going to go ahead and speak for many people. We don't want it. We have enough of those. There are good people who live in those hotels, and there are bad people who live in those hotels. And we don't want that for our town. I grew up here. I may die here. But this is a big change for our town. We also have not been talking at all about corporate mailings, Airport Road, what am I missing? Whippany Village. Those were not mentioned at all, and I don't know why. Is there a reason why we didn't mention those at all tonight?
No, there's no
Are they
reason
in a
why.
different?
They're all part of the settlement plan and the greater plan.
Okay, because they weren't mentioned in the thing at all.
Well,
So
because Pine Plaza seems to be the focus for this meeting, but we could talk about any one of them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I live on Salem Drive, so my kid goes to Salem Drive. The amount of traffic is crazy already. How many more children will go there? How we're at or close to max. How do we manage that? Are we going to have trailers because we can't fit all of our students? What is happening with schools? And I think that's a big fear also. I'm probably close to my 4 minutes.
37 seconds to go.
How many?
37
I'll
seconds.
fill them. And my last, so there's the school issue, but there's also who is benefiting from all of this development, and how do we, like financially, talking about the money, how do we help our town be the town that it is without adding all of these potential issues?
Your question is so very broad in nature.
You gave me a lot of time.
I'm inclined to tell you that start a letter writing campaign to our state assembly.
Absolutely.
Start a letter writing campaign to our senators, and get the Superior Court of the state of New Jersey to modify the damn fair share housing laws to be more equitable. It ain't going to happen, okay,
Right.
down in Trenton, okay, with control of Trenton. But let me get off the political side of it. Are we going to make income off of this? They will pay fair share taxes. There's no question about it. Even a pilot is going to have a valuation on it that's going to pay the required taxes. How we control it is up to this committee. Education has been informed. Ace, you're...
Yeah, Trish, I just want you to know that we've been involved in this for quite a while now. And after every meeting where we specifically talked about numbers, between the front door of my truck, I called Mr. Wasco, and from my truck to my house, I called Carol Grossi, because Brian Cahill and I are co-liaisons to
Then
the
he calls
schools.
me when I'm trying to get up the driveway, but go ahead.
We talked about worst-case scenarios. We talked about what schools can accept some children. Without being specific, I know our K through 5s are all pretty much at max. We know there's a little room in the middle school. We know there's a little room in the high school. But they've gone through this once before in the late 70s and early 80s. We're not exactly sure on what the program is going to be, but all hands are on deck. We did make an agreement for as little as possible. There's going to be impact, but I want you to know, as far as all the concerns with police, schools, I live right around the block from you. All of these concerns are my concerns and all of our concerns. But you have my word that every single high-level conversation we had, or even medium level, that involved infrastructure, police, schools, DPW, water, sewer, we've all talked to everybody. And Mr. Wasco, as liaison, I talk to him at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. So they're the professionals in this field. I know when I served on the board of ed with Brian, 5 years ago, a teacher started at 51.2. We did some math on X amount of children per classroom. Second grade and down is 22, third grade and up is 24. What would that project? So everybody's working as hard as they could to see what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. And then, like Fred said before, when are they going to start? And they're going to stagger with the enrollment. So you have our word as residents and parents that everybody's looking at this and concerned, and there will be more money coming in. So, and with the pilot, we're going to get to decipher where some of that money goes in the breakdown. So we're going to have to come up with new solutions to this new problem. But it's not going unaddressed.
You know who's not concerned about any of that? The schools, the police, the infrastructure? The courts. The courts that are making us do this could care less. They refer to it as the price of progress. And that's why I back what Ron said up. We need to get our legislatures in line and make them do their jobs and take this away from the courts and put a fair plan in place. Because I don't know what we're going to do fourth round. I mean, we're working on it, but right now, a judge can basically hand out any number they want, and then we have to spend another 3 years negotiating it and going through all this again. So really, that's where we need to start. We all need to start. Make them do their jobs.
And Trish, we made a commitment to stick to the 4 minutes and be careful, but I want you to know something. Brian just nailed it. I asked the gentleman from the state several times, and you know how I can be kind of pushy, what we're going to do, and he smirked and said it was progress. That's the attitude of the state. And what we had to do was the best that we could do with what they handed down. And if it was up to any one of us, we wouldn't have done it.
Every community in New Jersey is going through this. Every community. A lot worse than us. Don't talk to Mayor Panula in East Hanover. He's so upset over the great amount of units that he got stuck with. Same thing is true of Morris Township, Morris Plains. Morris Plains ignored COA all these years. Now, bang, all of a sudden Frank Juther has to deal with hundreds and hundreds of units going in there. So that's the thing. You address transparency for a second. And that's been first and foremost with this Township Committee. See that camera over there? Every one of these sessions is on YouTube and on Facebook and on the website. You can go to hanovertownship.com. You can list the date of our meeting. You can open that up. You have to be here on Thursday nights. There's 2 people out there. That's it. That's it. You can see any one of our meetings by going on the website, going to the date you want it, open it up to see the whole meeting. Don't run machinery while you're looking at it, but it's there. Okay, Trish, do you have any further, or you want to?
No, I think that's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Joan Rizzo, where are you?
Joanne Rizzo, 10 Cove Lane Road in Whitby. A lot of my questions have been answered, but a new one came up. 60 units for seniors. There seems to be almost this idea that that's better than kids because seniors will need less. But we're talking about Whitby. We don't have an ambulance. And if you were at the meeting last night, which I know most of you were, we don't even have a set home as of tonight for our fire department soon. Seniors need services. Will there be activities for these people that you're putting on Route 10? Will there be transportation? What else will they need, and how are we going to provide it? Or is there a requirement that the builder provide it?
I'm sure in the course of this being developed, that a seniors complex, similar to Leicester Center, similar to the other seniors complexes we have in our town, have programs, have management, have recreational facilities, etc. I can tell you that right now our town is being serviced by your first aid squad that comes out of the District 3 area, but it's also serviced by men and women from both the Whippany District 3 and District 2.
Right.
So, Brian, I don't know if you want to comment
No,
on
I
that.
don't want to say there are EMTs in District 2 here at the Whippany Firehouse. What they don't have is an ambulance of their own.
Right.
As far as response times are concerned, there's not a lack or a safety issue as far as getting medically trained personnel to sites.
But not an ambulance to get to the people. And you're, again, putting 60 senior units in the same town that already has the assisted living, the nursing home. And while there may be trained people, and that's great, they come, they don't have all of the resources that someone pulling up with a fully stocked ambulance would have. So I just want to make the point that trading off space in the schools for seniors is not necessarily going to mean that we're not going to have a tax burden.
For sure.
And have to provide services and do other things to accommodate. If it's 60 units, it could be 120 or more seniors.
So add that to our list of infrastructure concerns that we're all losing sleep over and will be for the next 5 or 6 years.
And all of us as well.
I'm sure.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. So, Julian, you're on.
Yeah, Julian Crawford, 404. Hey, first of all, this is a great job you guys did, because there's a lot of anxiety through the Facebook stuff, so great job. But I just want to, and thanks for Nico, saving Nico, that's good. But the other thing I came here for was Midas. Midas has been very successful and very good. I don't know I'm going to take my car to a dealer, and that's 3 times what Midas costs, but I know the relationship is going to depend on the developer on what Midas can agree to, right?
Yes.
So I'm hoping that maybe we can find a replacement somewhere in town for Midas. I mean, that's really, those are good people, and it's good service, and that's all I really have to have. And you guys doing a great job, really.
Thank you, dude. I will tell you that, I will tell the community that's here today that our Economic Development Council, which has been meeting for some 4 years now, is now focusing their mission on what's known as business retention. It's very nice that we've got all these new corporates in town. It's nice that we gain more corporate people and to add to our ratables and tax rolls, but we want to keep them in town. We want to keep all our retailers. We want to keep every business that we've got. They're focusing on that. They're looking at the limits of what they could possibly do to intervene. We've got to be cautious about how we proceed on that, but we're looking at it, business retention. Okay. Moving along, Julian, okay, Laura O'Brien. Laura, you here?
I'm right here.
Oh, there you go, okay.
Laura O'Brien. I live at 33 Sunset Drive in Whippany, New Jersey.
Yep.
I don't actually have any questions because a lot of them have been addressed. I just want to go on record and say that I am very concerned about how this is going to affect our education, and I'm hoping we're planning in advance to have a solution, because we are going to have more kids. As much as you're saying it's minimal kids for the 1 and 2 bedrooms, there still are 3 bedrooms that could be up to 4 kids if they have multiple boys and girls.
Oh, yeah.
So there will be, additional kids in our school system. I'm not from the Whippany Vortex. I'm from North Carolina, the 49th school system in the nation, 49th worst. My mother was a public school teacher in New Jersey, and she put us in private school in North Carolina because the school system was so bad. And I grew up in the trailers when we went for the first year to public school. There are health issues involved with trailers. They are more prone to mold. The heat in the summer is very horrible for the children. Kids pass out.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have snow days. We had heat days. So please, we need to keep this in mind, and I just want to voice my concerns.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Is Art Linfante here?
Who's that?
Arthur 4 minutes, no pontification.
Start them right now.
Hey.
Set that for 3. Start that timer right now.
No mercy. No mercy. Go ahead.
Art Linfanti, 2902 Appleton Way.
By the way, Art is a member, one of our members of our Economic Development Committee. He's a professional in real estate appraisal, etc. So, Art, go ahead.
I think this meeting is fantastic. Fred, I got to tell you something. You explained, I think, very clearly an extremely complicated situation. It's very hard to navigate people who don't know because they're not in the business or they don't understand the nuances of redevelopment. I think you did a great job explaining a very complicated situation. I hope the people here tonight and those who may see the video begin to get an idea of the yeoman's task the Township Committee has had to try to navigate through something, as Brian had mentioned, has been thrust upon you. Courts don't care. You're going to build, and we're going to tell you what to do. And if you take a look over the last 10 years, what this Township Committee and the Planning Board and all the consultants that have been with the town have accomplished, it's Bear, it's MetLife, it's the shopping centers on Hanover Avenue, which is a phenomenal success. And now we're getting down to things that are very difficult, which are the River Park and the County Club property. And I just want to say publicly that I think the work that is done by this Township Committee and by the professionals that are working with the Planning Board people themselves, you've done a phenomenal job. It's been extremely difficult, and I hope everybody here gets a flavor of the pressure you're under to try to keep Hanover as a community and not to become overcrowded. The concerns that are being discussed are real, and you have to deal with them, and it's not easy. So I just hope everybody gets an appreciation for that, and some of this misinformation that's out there gets checked before people get nervous. And maybe sometimes we could have some people come out with more responsible information, but I think, as you heard, the town would like us to be a little bit more communicative. So I just wanted to make that point. I wanted to thank you guys for the yeoman's task that you've done over the last 10 years and how well I think everything has progressed in this town.
Thank you, Art.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
We thank all our boards. We thank you. We thank all of the boards who volunteer their time, part of our planning board, boards of adjustment, all throughout the town that contribute to the information that we need to make
Again, Art's a member of our Economic Development Activity Committee, and they're there to help serve. And part of their objective is business retention. We don't want to lose any business in Hanover Township. And that group meets twice a month on Friday mornings at 8 a.m. Normally the first and the third Friday.
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome to attend, to come to that meeting. And I think you'll see a group of your neighbors, they're all residents, working together, trying to help strategically guide Hanover forward. So take advantage of it.
Thank you, John. Lois DeCarroll. Lois, are you here?
Lois DeCaro, 114 Park Avenue, Hanover.
Lois, lower the microphone a little bit.
It's because I'm short.
Nothing meant by that. Just, okay, go ahead.
And you guys know I've usually been really, really happy with what you've done in town, moving the town forward. And I was worried on this one. So I really appreciate you taking the time to explain this to everybody. I do have a few statements, and then I do need some clarification on one thing. So I'm going to try to talk quickly. But thanks again, and thanks for taking condemnation off the table for Pine Plaza. Just wanted to bring up, I think, when you start thinking about it, that 7-story extended stay hotel might be better off being like a boutique Four Seasons hotel or something to kind of insulate us from what we have with those other hotels. And my sister-in-law asked, why can't we eminent domain those other hotels? But maybe that's a discussion for another night. Another statement I have is 60 senior housing units out of 1,600. I mean, can they give more thought to more units for our seniors? Maybe? What was my other thing? I have a question about, and my one question was why so many rentals, but you guys explained that, and it made total sense. But my other question is about River Park, and we have, 900 and something units coming in there? And you said something about the contamination. Amy New didn't clean up all that contamination when she did all that?
They did significant cleanup, hot spots there, et cetera. Fred, I'm sure you're more familiar with it.
I think there's issues. I don't want to say they're what they were, but there's things like the dam needs to be addressed, and I don't know exactly, maybe Jerry does, where they are with the dam, but that dam needs to be addressed with the DEP. I know they're working on it, and they're investing in that, and I don't know specifically. There were environmental issues, but it's still part of what's been a long process to the cleanup.
They still exist.
Nothing can go forward without that being addressed. So,
Okay.
But I don't want to say, that it's. I know they're spending a lot of time with their due diligence, and they're going to have to demonstrate to the township.
We
that they'd
have
be
somebody
ready.
here from River Park, and would just give me a nod. Fred, I think one of the things that we're still addressing is the dam.
Yes.
The dam and the riverbed itself, the DEP would like the design of the river cleaned up so that we can use it for some passive parks along the way as well.
that
I
would
think
be
we're
nice.
looking at that in the design. We'd
Okay.
like to take Eden Lane. I don't want to get into a planning session here because people don't want to talk. But there's some exciting plans along the river on our Eden Lane side for passive parks, bicycling, adding to the connectivity trail that's going to go through there, all part of it. I think the major part of the cleanup has been already undertaken, and it's been landscaped. So we'll have to see what they bring in.
And we can't get any market rate for sale senior units or regular units in there?
Fred, I don't know. What do you have on that?
At this point,
It's all rentals?
At this point, no. But if the opportunity ever came back to the township committee, I think they would jump on that. I think they really would. But as of right now,
I mean, it sounds like it'd be a really nice place to
Right.
own a place.
yeah. And to the mayor's point, there's other things like connectivity between both sites that has been talked about in Patriots Path, right, Cherry, or the Riverwalk, and even. I know that River Park's had discussions with the M&E Railroad to try to see if there's some type of availability down the road to have transportation back to Morristown from there.
Oh,
so
I
things
remember
like
being
that.
on planning board and
Yeah.
bringing that up.
Yeah. So those are all things that hopefully be behind all this, that, the town center and, something that is very desirable will, there'll be a good outcome. And I think there's still a lot of planning that's going to go in, and the planning board and our planners will have a lot, and it's going to be a dialogue. I know that they're coming back to start just talking about what it's going to look like. So it's a process. And all of these type of concerns, you're going to have a chance to express, and this township committee will as well with them. Those discussions. Mr. Phillips, who's next to me, is one of the two planners the township committee has selected. Mr. Phillips is handling the Pine Plaza development because of his expertise. And then there's also Joe Burgess and his staff who's addressing River Park because the township wants to get as much feedback from its planners in this process. And that's
Okay.
all being paid for by the respective applicants, by the way.
Good. But real quick, I'm still unclear about pilot. So, Mr. Mayor, you said same amount of money as taxes, but don't they get to write off like all their expenses, their losses, everything before that amount is paid? And how do we know it'll be, we don't know what they're going to write off. How do we know it'll be the same amount of money as the taxes would have been?
Fred, you're going to correct me on
Yeah,
this. but
there'll be a.
Go ahead.
When the time comes to approve that, there'll be a public hearing, but there'll be an illustration as to how it works. Generally, how the pilot works is, it comes out to be overall to the developer. I'm going to just estimate that it's about potentially 5 to 10% less than what they would pay overall. But to the township, there is the revenues are more direct. The county is really foreclosed. They only get 5% as opposed to what the county gets now. And the township can allocate where that money goes. The one benefit of the pilot is you also have the ability to, as we're doing here, we will make sure that certain municipal services will not be provided, and there's a fixed rate. There's no tax appeals and those uncertainties in the process. That's what has to be paid. It's the gross revenues. They'll be audited, which is actually remitted to the township. So it is a different arrangement, but we'll be able to put together at least what I'd call like a pro forma, to estimate what the rents would be, what the payment to the township would be, and what conventionally what the taxes would be if it were going down that path. That'll be put together. There's no agreement right now, but that's what it'll look like.
I hope it works out,
Yes.
because that's 50 years over there, correct?
I think it'll be 30 in total, but still, it's a
long time.
significant stream. Yes.
We all
Yes.
probably won't be here. All right, thanks again for this clarification meeting. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Lois. Appreciate it. Judy Arati. He's leaving.
Judy Irati, Locust Drive, Hanover Township. I also have a question about the pilot. And Fred, you said it's only if you have a house that's assessed at a certain amount, you pay taxes on that house. And you said the pilot would only, I don't know if people are real familiar with pilots, it's payment in lieu of taxes.
Right.
So you pay a sum, a fixed sum. Now, you're saying that's only like 10 to 15% less than a total
on average,
taxable?
I'm giving an estimate, that it may be, if you were to look at it, if the tax bill conventionally would be $100,000, it may come out around $95,000, but again, over time, that could change because property, the value, they age, but the payment stream is based on the revenue. Like, for an example, if in any of these agreements, if the rents increase on the market units, then the payment to the township automatically increases. So, but I want to say, historically, in pilots, it is a little bit less than what the conventional taxes would be. But you have the stability of no tax appeals, where you're paying back for the schools or the county. And you also, this was part of the negotiations because with that pilot, in effect, honestly, we were able to get the number of units reduced. We didn't want to have, over any additional development. It was a way it actually brought back, I think it was about 300 units by going that right. And at the same time saying, no additional services. So even if there's, let's just say it's $50,000 less a year, it's probably in that range what the municipal services between sanitation, snow removal would cost. It offsets it. And you still have, the township would not discuss any type of tax considerations on the commercial development. All the commercial development at River Park and Pine Plaza is subject to conventional taxes. But there is a benefit to the developer, it's true, but it also, in the long run, you hope that at the end of the day, the township winds up, of course, ahead because of the depreciating values, and that may have changed over the years if there were tax assessments or tax appeals, but there is.
Okay, so to clarify, the 987 units at River Park
Yes.
are under a pilot program
They
for
would
what I
be.
think read for 35 to 50 years.
Yeah, it'd be 30 from the date that they take occupancy.
Take off.
Yes.
And basically, on average, somebody say something? On average, they would only pay 10 to 15% less than if they were fully taxed?
I'm going to estimate that for now. I don't have the numbers. I don't know what the rents will be like, but that's my experience that I see. It's a little bit less overall. It's an incentive for the developer. A lot of times, it's also tied to the fact that there's a lot of site work that will need to be done to get it to a development stage, and as I said, it was an incentive to get to the numbers in a more manageable way. And there's also going to be on the site, there's going to be 20 special needs housing units as well that River Park agreed to build, which has always been important to the township and the community. So, much like what we have at other locations, let's see, we have like the
Group homes.
groups home. We have other, we have group homes, special needs type.
So is this pilot a set formula, or is it dependent upon what the township committee would?
Oh, no, it's absolutely, Judy, a set formula.
Okay.
It's based on, we will get an audited statement from River Park every year that will say, here's our revenues, and that has to be paid. If it's not paid, the township has the same rights as a tax foreclosure if it's not paid.
So I do believe that we have a couple of properties in town that are already pilot. One of them is Metro West. So it would be interesting to see what their taxes would be if they weren't under a pilot and what pilot is paying. And it would be also interesting to see if I think there's about 3 pilot projects in town. All the money goes to the municipality, not to the school, not to open space, nothing. It would be interesting to see with these pilot programs, the money they're bringing in, how much the town has turned over to the school. Now, I know on the 60 units that are senior in Pine Plaza, there's not going to be any children in the school, so that would make sense to have a pilot there. You're not doing anything to the school. River Park, 987 units. You may have a problem.
The committees, one of the things we've had a discussion about, but it's a little bit early, is an ordinance that would set forth what that formula would be for the schools. But as Mr. Gallagher said, that's probably a conversation that he'll have and the committee will have with the school to coordinate that before we ever get a dollar in.
We'll be able to manage that. We'll be able to manage the funding and direct it where now we cannot.
Right.
Each one of be it the schools, be it fire, be it county, et cetera, of a certain amount, as you know, of your tax dollar. In the case of a pilot, we'll have a lot more flexibility in management. If we want to direct more money to the schools, this committee can do that. That's the way it's going to work.
Great. And the other question I have is about seniors and affordable housing and...
Why don't you ask that in your next 4 minutes, because you're done. Thank you.
Well, I was not interrupted, but I was given some time. Seniors, housing, I'm a senior in town. I know that other seniors in town, if they own their house and they sell it, they're not going to be eligible for affordable housing in town. And we don't really even know what affordable housing means to seniors in town. So I just wanted to make that last remark. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Gallagher, for pushing for the non-condemnation.
Thank you for your comments, Mrs. Arati. Much appreciated. The Paul Zesko. Paul?
He's going to pass. He's going to pass.
Oh, you're going to pass? Okay. Tom, how'd you write your name here? Shedden? Tom Shedden? S-H-E-D-E-N? Yeah, Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, Tom Shedden, 81 Mount Pleasant Ave. This is another question. 30 years ago, we went through the same thing. You were there, and Mr. Giorgio. I don't know if anybody else was, but we were told by Bill Mikas that there was not going to be an access road. It was just going to be a cul-de-sac. In fact, an access road wasn't even brought up. Then a friend of mine had to bid for a job for the plaza, and he told me that there's an access road. So I went to the planning board meetings, and their final resolution was they didn't think our road could handle the traffic. Then, thinking it was done again, I heard from another friend that the committee was reinstating that access road because Lucent wanted their employees to be able to get back and forth to the food town so they can eat their lunches, and the Legion wanted an easy access from Route 10. Those were the two reasons. So we argued about that. We got sidewalks because of the arguing about that, which they're deteriorating now. They look like hell. And I'm just wondering, what's going to happen to the access road now? Am I going to have all these people coming down our road?
I think we're far from a site plan discussion.
Well, when do we get into that? Because
Probably 9 months from now.
9 months?
9 months from now. But that will be the time. But I do believe from a planning standpoint, we have taken into account trying to manage carefully traffic impact to Mount Pleasant as a result of this. And there are some considerations that the planning board is already thinking to about that, because very much so we respect and understand residential property issues. So I can only say when that comes back to the planning board, please come out, please make yourself.
Will we be notified? Because last time we were.
Everything is.
Because we're within the 200 feet.
Planning board meets second, third, and fourth Tuesdays of the month, starting at 7 p.m.
But you're saying this won't be for a while?
Look at the township website.
And the
That's our
agenda.
official means for communicating information. And that's the time, that's the place to really bring issues like that forward. That's really site plan discussion.
And Mr. Shedden, Mr. Phillips next to me told me that he knows exactly what you're speaking about. And he doesn't forget those things. So
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, the road was pretty bad right after that food town opened up. It was bad for a while. Now, it's beautiful. It's like we have a residential road. So we would like to keep that if possible. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, Lenny Wassel. Lenny? Lenny here?
Nope.
Lenny, you're talking, you're leaving.
No.
No?
That's Bill Miller.
Okay.
So on, Bill.
We're going to pass. Terry Baird. Terry?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Terry Baird, 180 Parsippany Road in the Whippany section of Hanover. And I first would like to thank you for taking the non-condemnation or the condemnation off the table, because that was a real surprise to me that the township would even think about taking property from people, businesses or homes, for a developer's profit. I do have a question in reference to timeline for Pine Plaza. You said that you wouldn't start to be building until like a year out. When will the destruction of Pine Plaza begin? I'm sorry, I'm supposed to make the chairman.
Terry, that's a tough one. There's such a procedure that they have to go through. They're not even prepared to come into planning yet.
Yes, they have. They've subdivided already.
But that's in concept. But.
Yeah, the next step will be a redevelopment plan, which means it's an ordinance, a development ordinance for Pine Plaza, and there'll be notice and public hearing. And I'm going to estimate, if it's August right now, that would probably be sometime in October or early November when it would come to a public hearing.
And that would be done through ordinance or resolution?
Ordinance. That means there'd be an introduction, and then there'd be notice, and there'd be a final public hearing. It would be referred to the planning board for consistency determination. So all that, and that's just for the ordinance. And then I would say it would be into next year when that property comes in for site plan approval, like any other application before the planning board.
So when it comes in for site plan approval, then they get the go-ahead to start knocking it down?
Yes, I mean, unless they, and I can't sure about the destruction part, if what happens if they take out a demolition permit. Blaze,
That's going to go...
That's different.
Isn't that go with
If they
the
take out a
developers?
demolition
I don't
permit,
know what that would mean for that site, Jerry.
how would we be notified? How would we know about that? Is that going to be one of those little tiny legal ads somewhere that, you know, you got to
That part of it,
be like a hamster to find it?
There's no notice required when people demolish structures.
There's no notice?
Not when they demolish structures on their own property, but keep in mind, to demo, first, there'd have to be a sale. Secondly, the tenants would have to be relocated out of that before any of that could happen. And there may be other restrictions as well on that. So, for example, if there was demolition, there has to be adequate access and so forth. There'd have to be stabilization that would be occurred, have to be approved by the Soil Conservation District. All those things would have to happen before you could do demolition on a site of that size. But as far as notice goes, there wouldn't be. But I think given the need to relocate, you'd know. Once you see all the stores are empty and that sort of thing, if that were to be the case, then I think you'd know that demolition would probably follow. But sometimes builders won't demo until after the site plan because they want to make sure that they have a site plan that they can live with before they go to the expense of demolishing structures. So it's really hard to say. But as far as notice goes,
There's no official notice in the paper or anything. They just basically get a permit from the building department and down she comes.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. Did I beep already? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, thank you. I had a couple questions in reference to resolutions that you have passed through the body in the past months. Because there seems to be some discrepancy, and I'm concerned about the transparency of the Township Committee in reference to the transparency of what's going out on the website. In the actual resolutions, take for example, Resolution 52-2019. That's the one with the the Planning Board to undertake a preliminary investigation to determine the proposed study area with the condemnation thing, okay? I'm going through with the lot and block numbers, okay? In some of these have, in the resolution that's signed by the mayor and Mr. Giorgio, have different lot and block numbers in them than the ones that are listed in the official minutes that are available on the website and the final agendas. And I was wondering if there was a reason for that.
Well, the reason could be that there's a correction done after the preliminary resolution is done, and we check to make sure with the engineering department that we have the correct lot and block numbers.
But when the one that is officially signed, that's the legal one, right? Not the one that's in the minutes?
They're all legal, but we have the right to make corrections if there is an error.
Okay. Because, say for
The whole
example...
idea is to make sure you have it factual.
Yes, well, I have copies from...
Whether it's in the resolution or the minutes, it has to be factual. So if there was an error for whatever reason, we have that right to correct it. Am I correct?
Yeah, so long as it's not a material, substantial, if it's a, grammatical or...
No, I'm not talking grammar, I'm talking lot and blocks.
Well, if there's a numerical, but I think there's also a description. I don't know which one we're looking at, Terry, so I need to look at it.
March 14th, Resolution 60, 2019. It includes lots 15 and 17 on Mount Pleasant Ave, 4001, 15, and 17. However, the official minutes do not include those two particular block and lots. And neither does the agenda, the blurb that you put on the agenda. So there's two homes on Mount Pleasant that are signed in the official document, with the signatures and the yays and nays on it, that include two extra block and lots.
I think, why don't we ask the planner, Paul Phillips, who did the area needs study, and presented it to the planning board, what was in there, whether these blocks and lots were in there.
So you mentioned lot 15 in block 4001?
4001, 15, and 17.
So they were not part, I can't address the issues of what was in prior documents. I can tell you what I was directed to do in terms of the study, and I can tell you that those lots were not included in the study.
They weren't in the study, but they are in the, where you get your contract for the $55,000. In the official resolution that's signed, it includes 15 and 17.
But that's for the contract to hire Mr. Phillips? Yeah, but that's just to give, like, that wouldn't, that's accurate. You know, at that point in time, those lots may have been considered, but they weren't. So that's just about his contract, but the work he did was very specific. Like, I don't find from a legal perspective, I think that's just an accurate reflection of what happened, which is Mr. Giorgio's responsible to do.
And the resolution that was basically adopted by the governing body directing the planning board to undertake the investigation and for me to do the study on behalf of the planning board, that resolution did not include those lots.
Correct. You mean 62-2019?
I don't recall the number, but the
It says
resolution.
authorizing the Township of Hanover Planning Board to undertake a preliminary investigation to determine whether the proposed study area, which includes property designated as Block 4001, lots 5, 6, 7, a portion of 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 17, and Block 8803, 17.
That wasn't the resolution that was the basis upon the planning board being directed to conduct the investigation and for me to be retained to conduct the investigation on behalf of the planning board. It must have been an earlier iteration.
That's correct.
And it wasn't the formal resolution as I understand it, but Joe, you can
It's
correct
from
me if I'm
March
wrong,
14th.
but that's my understanding.
I think that's what happened, and we were relying on the information we were getting from the engineering department as to what was going to be a part of the study area.
Well,
And
this
that's
one
why there
says,
was a
it's up on
correction.
March 14th, and it says, to further authorizing the planning board to utilize the services of Paul Phillips, of Phyllis Price in preparing preliminary investigation.
Correct.
So these extra 2 lots appear in, from what I see, 3 resolutions. However, they're not reflected in the official minutes nor on the agenda that was posted so that people could come and see. So my point is, there's 2 houses on Mount Pleasant that people would, if you look at agenda, you would see, oh, look, my lot and blocks aren't on there, on the resolution, right? Well, it wasn't on the agenda, and it isn't in the minutes. But when you go through your resolution list that goes all those pages, it's in there. Those lots 15 and 17 are there. So, and it says under condemnation. So,
Can I ask what resolution number you're referring to that had those lots in there?
62-2019 is one of them. It happens with 59, 60, and 62. It is not included when you originally did.
And again, I don't have the resolution number with me, but the resolution that directed the planning board to undertake the study that I undertook did not include those 2 residential lots.
It didn't include it in the minutes, but it's included in the actual resolution with the official signatures.
But all I'm saying is that I believe there was a subsequent resolution post that date, which basically did not include those properties.
These all 3 were done on March 14th.
And I don't know the date of the resolution.
And Terry, I mean, look, I think we all know that Mr. Giorgio has one of the...
He dots his I's and crosses his T's.
So let's just say, if there's something in the minutes that doesn't, with everything that's there, if there's something in the minutes, that may be the way it was reported. But the most important thing, to your point, is everybody who was potentially impacted by this study received personal notice before the planning board hearing. And I don't think I don't want the public to think we have in any way missed anything, especially based on what Mr. Phillips is saying and what Mr. Giorgio did, because if that were the case, we'd have to do this all over again. I don't think anybody wants to do it all over again. But I'm convinced that the study and what transpired is all in order, and if there's something in the minutes that doesn't reconcile, it might have been just reported that way. But we can take a look, but
Well, whatever you're going to do later on this evening in order to rescind or whatever, to remove the condemnation cloud over here, if it possibly is in this official resolution with the signatures, then...
we will read all the blocks and locks anyway tonight before the governing body takes action, and we've got that. Yes.
All right, thank you. I just don't want, these other people to be blindsided.
No worry
something.
when you have the longest tenured clerk in the entire county.
That's what I was
good.
surprised.
We're good.
Thank you.
There's no issues.
Thank you, Terry. Am I pronouncing this right? Bruno Bill? Sil? Kill? Bruno, are you here? No? All right, I'm going to move on. Lisa Lepore. Lisa?
I passed all of my
You
questions
passed?
answered, yes.
All right. Bill Tudor. Bill?
You feel a little better?
I absolutely do. I live on Legion Place, so yes, I feel a lot better.
Good, that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bill, how you doing?
Oh, fine. Bill Keener, 26 Hamilton, and I've seen all you gentlemen last night for the same thing. By the way, I really appreciate all this information on zoning and so forth because it's an education for me. However, I'm going to change subjects a little bit. Just for information purposes, someone mentioned an ambulance. The ambulance is supplied by the Cedar Knolls Fire District. If they pick you up in Whippany, your insurance company gets charged, and if there's a balance, you get charged. If you live in Cedar Knolls and you get picked up by an ambulance, the insurance company pays, and the Cedar Knolls Fire Department forgets the balance due, just for information purposes. Last night we had a meeting. I wish we had as much enthusiasm in the crowd as we have here tonight, but it was fun. Anyway, a question and some comments. I think I learned last night that the township is now co-signator on the loan for the fire department?
No.
Yes or no?
No, not no. It's the town is part of the guarantee process because the county requires all the public entities to be part of it. So it's the fire district, co-signing is the county, and then the district is next in line, and the taxpayers of the district would be responsible, and then after that is the township. It's really an endorsement of the loan in the event it were to ever, not that any public agency has ever defaulted in the state, not even Camden was permitted to do that, but the township is what I would say probably third in line if anything were to occur.
So the answer is yes.
That's not a cosigner. That's giving a guarantee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever you
No,
want
that's
to call
important.
it, you're on the hook.
Right.
Okay? Agreed. Okay.
Well, no, it's not just on the hook. Remember, the difference now is there's collateral. There's significant collateral. No, I think it's important. Previously, a private entity owned that building. But in this this proposal, the township, the members of the district, they have the collateral. They're getting a building.
We'll get to that. Just give me a minute.
And they're getting, I just want to explain about it's important. I don't want the public to think we're just blindly guaranteeing something. There's a building that would likely exceed the value of the loan, and there's payments from the fire company, a donation of really half the value, $1.2 million, and then $12,000, I believe, every month from the cell tower. That's not the property of the district. It's really a 50% pledge that would be part of the collateral the township's backing up, which is a good thing, right? Good.
I don't really disagree with what you said, but
I like that.
Fine, if that's the way you want to describe it, I'll more look at it like from a legal standpoint, where they go sue the one with the most money. Anyway, the one thing I did have a problem with was the notice in the paper went out on June 15th for the vote. which is this Saturday. The next day, one of the officers of, I'm not sure it was the fire company or the fire district, issued a memorandum telling his organization not to talk about what is going on until the meeting which occurred last night. Now, I think that's sort of suppression of information and knowledge, and I find that very reluctant to have occur in this town. In my view, there was a cap on the freedom of speech, and there's a cap on the freedom of information. Now, the meeting last night is only 3 days before the vote. How can anyone walk into a meeting and know in 3 days how they want to vote the next 3 days? I also learned some new information, which we just discussed about whether it's a co-signer or whatever. I agree with your discussion. But also I found out, and I've been trying to track these numbers, that it was a 25-year mortgage. Never heard about it until last night. I have a problem with that. The other thing that occurred was that despite the memorandum, skip that for a minute, the thing that occurred too with the memorandum was there was only a meeting at night. Since I'm a member of the seniors, and I appreciate everyone looking for senior housing, they have a hard time getting out at nighttime and driving. So with only one meeting to explain to the public what was going on, it was at nighttime. Turned out it was a really bad rainstorm too, so they can't go. I've had the seniors ask me, what is going on? There's no explanation given them. This was after one of the members of the fire district gave a talk. I have a problem with that. The other thing that comes up, there was a financial booklet put out, which you were sort of referencing, or a statement put out. And they said it's $6.1 million, but it's broken down. $4.5 million was actual bond, and then to get up to the 6.1, they are saying that the bonds will be issued at a premium of $700,000, which is money towards the bond of $6.1 million. They also said the sale of the rest of the fire company was going to be worth $900,000. Now, both of those numbers, the 900 and the 700, are based on estimates. A $10,000 change in any of those estimates, preferably not to the worst, results in a $25 million payment over 25 years. Okay? So their estimate on how to pay for the 6.1 is based on estimates. If an estimate is off $10,000, the taxpayers have to pay $25,000 over 25 years.
Do you have much more, Bill? Because in due respect to everybody else,
the 4 minutes says right up.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I have one.
Can you sum up?
Yes. The deal is, well, I was asking a lot of questions, too, over here. The comment was made, too, that it's only costing the taxpayer $14. And that's the case of the half full and half empty glass. If you look at the half full, it's $14 per household. If you look at half empty, it's $5 million more taxes, or a 1/3 increase in the taxes collected for the fire district. So it depends on how you want to present the numbers. It's either pizza at $14 or it's $5 million more taxes from the community. The other thing is, just last question. I understand that the two town fire companies were established by town ordinance some 100 years ago, maybe. If that's true, can the town council also consolidate those two fire districts by ordinance? Yes or no?
Bill, you're let's put it on the line, okay?
Okay.
The answer to you is yes, okay? We find that the fire companies right now, District 2 and 3, are operating very efficiently. If we municipalize, and we can do it tomorrow, okay? The cost of running the entire fire district would go up. With paid fire officials as well. We don't know that we would have the same volunteer base if it was a municipal organization, so we would have to probably remedy that in a different way. That's the way these gentlemen see it right now. But I don't know if you have any comment at all?
I have a different tact or a different approach to this. I've talked about this and that I believe that there should be discussions down the road about combining the districts. I know there are members of both the districts that are, some are against it, but most are becoming open to it. My primary concern, as I've explained to you, Bill, on a number of occasions, is our priority right now is to assist the firehouse in any way that we can with the fire company to get into that new building. I mean, it's a matter. This is their top focus, and we're not going to get any attention from the district or the company until we can get over this major obstacle. That's always been my opinion on that matter.
Okay. Your comments are contrary to the consolidation study that was done 7 years ago.
Fair enough.
And we were losing about $500,000 a year in expenses for the fire districts every year since then. I looked at the finances of the current fire district, and I can cut out almost $700,000 right off the top. Okay, of their budget.
Bill, I don't want to cut you off, and I want to be fair to you and others, and I even stopped Ms. Arati at midstream, but I have to tell you, you really should be directing this to the fire commissioners at this point, who are the governance on this matter. This is not really appropriate, I don't think, for this, unless you have something that specifically affects the municipal end of the operation.
I think your capability of consolidating the two fire districts and being more efficient is right in your ballpark. If you want to ignore it, you can ignore it. But it is, if there's a problem with the two fire districts, it falls on your shoulders.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Okay. I understand. Final speaker of the night is Thomas Gallagher. Oh, you're not giving up your 4 minutes?
No. There's another time.
Oh, we have another one? All right.
I'll try only to use two, though. Tom Gallagher, 93 Forest Way, Hanover Township. I used to work for the city of Jersey City. I used to be their director of housing and economic development, and I organized probably 20 redevelopment plans and negotiated probably 30 pilot agreements for the city of Jersey City, so I'm a little bit familiar. What I'd really like to understand is, did we do any kind of general studies on the 1,500 units that are in those three COA sort of designated areas of what the school population would likely be if those three developments were built out? And I think it becomes very simple, and I think the township has a choice. You could either build the affordable units yourself or let builders do it on a 5-to-1 basis. And I think everybody knows that residential developments lose money. To educate a kid in Hanover Township is like $20,000. So even your normal house, your single-family house that pays $7,000 in taxes, actually costs the town money if they have one child. So my thought is, why didn't we look at actually doing our own sponsored affordable housing development where you build your own development all affordable, and instead of building 1,500 units with all those kids, you build 300 units that are all affordable. And actually, if you look at the projections of kids, you actually might save money. So I know these three developments deal with 300 of our 500 requirement, and we still have another 200 or 250 to go. And I would ask you to really look at the finances of this whole enterprise and whether it makes sense, whether we should really be looking at more creative solutions that in the long term would actually prevent us from having to build more schools and have even more kids and cost even more. I think if you have 300, just bottom line, if you have 300 new school children, that's $6 million a year in taxes. That's a 25% increase in everybody's school taxes. So I think we really have to look at affordability. And I would really be interested to see what the planner said of these 1,500 units, given their composition, what our projection is on how many school children are in those 1,500 units on. And you could do that with a simple survey of your existing rental stock and make an extrapolation.
We've done that.
So what's the number?
About 200 school kids.
200.
That's my estimate.
Right. So that's $4 million. And 200 kids is 10 more classrooms. So that's annexed. And so I think if you start looking at that for the next 200 units, now we're talking, $8 million in school levy.
You have to also measure in what the Board of Education has been doing in studying the student population, which is on the decline. Now, that they may either flatten or grow because of fair share housing. But you have to put in the fact that we do have a declining student population.
Right, but that,
The other problem is that if you're doing that based upon a per capita cost, it's not really an accurate projection. For example, we declined in student population for a number of years. I can guarantee you the school budget did not go down.
Right, that just makes the numbers worse, though, if you put more kids in.
I'm just saying
right?
is that, and it's been shown in other ways, when one student gets added to the school system, that doesn't result in a $25,000 increase in the school budget. It's really related more to number of teachers, numbers of staff. The physical infrastructure is largely the same. Maybe there's occasional, field upgrades and things like that, but that's not really related to the number of students. What really drives those costs are labor costs of existing staff. If you have to hire new teachers or build new classrooms, that's where you see that. But a per capita projection is not really a fair
well, it's not fair on one incremental house or 5 houses, but when you're talking about 1,500 units or 2,000 units, then I think it is fair because it's...
Well, 200 kids over 12 grades, okay, amounts to about 16 per grade, something like that?
Private school, too.
I don't think we have the room in the current classrooms for that.
Okay, well,
Well, wait, though, please, couple things.
Yes.
First, I think statistically, that's an estimate. 20% go to private schools, usually, out of that number.
No, what we did is we looked at all of our multifamily that exists today in Hanover Township, not counting the senior projects, and we came up with 0.13 school children per unit. 1 out of 7 would be 0.14 and change. So for every 7+ multifamily units in Hanover Township today, we have 1 public school child. We got the numbers from the Board of Ed. We know how many units we have. We did that, all right? It's possible in some of these situations it would be lower. I'm being conservative when I say the 200. So if you take 1,400, 1/7 of 1,400 is 200. It could be somewhat lower. For example, in some of these projects that are in a mixed-use situation, they may have fewer school kids than what we have in our current multifamily, which is pure housing. For example, Oak Ridge, Eden Mill Village, Sunrise, Hanover Hills, those are all pure townhouse, condo-type developments. In rental things where you have mixed use with commercial, it's less of a situation where people have children. They don't want to have kids there. So that may be less. I was giving you a conservative number, but I'm telling you we did that estimate of the thing, and it could be 150, it could be 100. I don't know. I have other studies I could share with you. I don't want to get into it that show lower numbers for rental multifamily housing than what I cited. But if I gave you those, you'd say, well, what you asked about if we had looked at existing housing in Hanover, and that's what I gave you. But
okay. And
I think it could be lower.
But also, I think it's important, it's not just as, you raise a good point about whether the township could have, perhaps funded this and built some inclusionary housing. We went through a process in all this. There's so many steps that were taken where the governing body said to the planner, the engineer, myself, go out and we want to inventory every single open space property that's owned by the township to see what we could do and try to cost it out on our own. And we brought a number of properties, and then we brought some properties that we thought would be interested in, maybe had already a public type use that could easily be converted. That would be something that would be funded by the township. The township looked at perhaps maybe a hotel that wasn't doing that well on Route 10, that might be a great location to convert. All of those were exhausted to the point where, one, it wouldn't be enough on those sites. And two, yes, there's the cost factor, which you would weigh against what you're saying. But I want you to know we couldn't find a location. And as mentioned earlier, there was a location the township owns next to Bogies. All those lots were looked at for that possibility, and we went round and round, but we did essentially preliminary types of just concepts to see what we could fit, but it wouldn't address the type of obligation that was still out there. And then we also spoke to existing communities, such as, next to Metro West and things like that. We had meetings to see what we could do to develop the site, to buy or develop, vacant land that would be very much in concert with what was there. And it just, and Mr. Gallagher, it fell short of what we needed to do, with the amounts that were there. But that exercise was for about 2 straight months of every single property was inventoried to see what we could come up with. I know, Jerry, you did it as well, and so did Blaze. You're right, but it didn't pan out. There's already discussion to cite something for the next round that might be, the numbers may be more defensible, and those type of options. Those properties were actually, 1 or 2 are kind of protected for future use. The governing body wants to protect for the fact that maybe those sites would be good in the next round for, like you said, for the township to sponsor. So it's the thought process, so you know.
Well, I would just challenge you, if these developers have sites that have 1,500 units, we certainly could have acquired property to build 200 to 300, right? I mean,
there wasn't any other site, this came up so much in the litigation, in all of the county that was as vacant, accessible, and had the, at least the utilities available as the River Park site. It was really looming as a very much, high-profile site in this whole process, whether it be in the litigation, the special master, and a concern as to the fact that it didn't have any real other utility but for this type of project. So it had to be really dealt with in a way that would hopefully be, would really be consistent with some of the goals of the township from a town center perspective. But it was still going to, River Park was still going to be there if we did that, and it would still have to be addressed. So at least now we're addressing it and trying to connect it to Pine Plaza. Same with Pine Plaza. They're still going to be there if we had built our own site. It was one of the factors in the process. I understand what you mean, but
I would just say one last point on the pilot as to what percentage of conventional taxes. The developer, in accepting 30 years at 10%, which is the lowest revenue percentage under the pilot statute and the longest term, has an idea, a market study of what he can charge in rent and what, otherwise he wouldn't agree to that number and make sure it works with the number of units. So our tax assessor can figure out pretty much what the pilot payments would be in a range, and what, if you built those units, what conventional taxes would be. So today you should be able to actually tell us what the tax difference is, rather than saying, well, we think it might be around 90-95%. You should have a financial study before you even accepted that settlement agreement to know what the difference is in a range, a pretty good definable range. Anytime you do a pilot, you do a cost-benefit study. It's standard. So I'm kind of shocked that we don't have a more specific number.
I don't think we're anywhere near the negotiations on the pilot.
But you already agreed to the percentage, 10% for 30 years.
We agreed. We have not done statistically what the total amount, Sylvia, what is going to be involved in that pilot.
Right, but I'm saying is we should have known generally what that number would have been when we agreed to those numbers. I mean, it's not a very difficult thing to do, and you guys should have had that information before you agreed to that. Is just my humble opinion. But thank you.
Fern, go ahead.
Fern Walken, 16 Gristmill Road, Cedar Knolls. Someone briefly mentioned the environmental impact of all of this. So I wanted to ask, is there or has there been or will there be an environmental impact study on these two developments, including but not limited to the entire area of Cedar Knolls and Whippany, which has been built over with a lot of blacktop and buildings and like Lowe's and Park, and fully understanding, I understand that you have a mandate here, so I'm not being critical, but I'm asking. what affects all this blacktop and the doing away with the permeable land that is part of this? That's a huge track, actually. That's going to be blacktopped over and built over. Is there a percentage of this land that can remain permeable so that we don't have local flooding, we don't have sewer backups, we don't have excessive water runoffs? So, places like Houston, Texas, which has, a history of overbuilding and then hurricanes and so forth, and it's just, everybody saw what happened there. So I know we don't have, generally speaking, those kinds of hurricanes here and that kind of heavy water, but the weather is changing and we are getting more and more rain, and I don't know, everybody's summer has been really rain-filled. And so I'm really curious if we're doing an environmental impact study and if there's some way to remediate the amount of blacktop and coverage and still keep some of the permeable land as maybe park space or something within the development. That's my question.
That's really an engineering question, but I will tell you, Jerry, follow me on this one, though. Most of the projects that come in on a onesie, twosie, threesie basis have stormwater management calculations and engineering done to see how we manage the water off the site, watershed.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of stormwater, there's certainly, DEP has regulations that are required to be complied with in terms of reducing stormwater and managing your stormwater on site. The municipalities have similar ordinances which are a requirement. In terms of sanitary sewer, those are again within the DEP's jurisdiction in terms of sewer service allocations. So there are other agencies, state agencies, that do address a lot of these environmental impacts.
Okay, so do we have any control over the percentage of land?
That is in terms of, that's more of a zoning question. That would be part of the...
That would be worked out in the redevelopment plan, but I just know conceptually Pine Plaza is almost all pavement today. It's likely to go down as far as impervious coverage. River Park is less so, although it was a paper mill at one time that did a lot of pollution, and the benefits of River Park are going to be cleaning up mitigation, improving the river, stabilizing its banks. There will obviously be some impervious coverage, but at least conceptually there will be substantial areas, very substantial areas of green remaining with that, and as Jerry indicated, the state, especially since the Whippany River runs through the property, the state has regulations dealing with wetlands, with riparian corridors, stormwater regulations, flood hazard regulations, all of which will have to be satisfied on the River Park site as it redevelops. So we just, while the detailed calculations and analyses have yet to be done, our general consensus is that it will be an environmental improvement within the constraints that you mentioned. We can't have nothing there. We have to provide the housing. But in the way that it's being proposed, we see it as relatively beneficial. It's compact. It doesn't pave the entire site. In fact, it's a type of a Main Street type of scheme that concentrates it in one area and leaves a lot of green area. So we see environmental benefits.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I just say one thing, because I just don't want to leave a stone unturned. To Mr. Gallagher's point a few minutes ago, I don't have all the information in front of me, but I do recollect, and I'll search for it, and if I get a hold of it, I'll send it to him. But we had a number of meetings with River Park, and we had an economic, I can't remember who it was. There's an economic expert who came in, albeit for River Park, but we demanded to see some of their financial projections, and then we came back, and this is a little bit unusual because it wasn't about, the cost-benefit analysis had to do with the fact that, we were faced with about 400 additional units. So sometimes, whatever the cost is, you try to balance it. But there were financials and information that was exchanged in that process. So I just don't want it to sound like it was ignored. I just couldn't. Mr. Giorgio and I had at least 2 meetings with River Park to gather, and we had asked for certain financial information. And I'm kind of going off memory because there's so many components to this, but we did. And I'll pull that information together. But before any agreement's finalized, there will be pro formas, there will be analysis. And to your point, but before that decision was made, there was discussion about, the balance of what would have been 400 units, and then we had said that we would not make a decision until we got some pro formas to your very point. And I just couldn't remember it, but when I get it, if I get your contact information, I'll pull it together, whatever I'm at liberty to share. So I just thought,
I'm going to put a clock
that
on
happened.
our experts.
So it was a good point.
4
I just
minutes on
wanted
our
to-
experts.
Thanks. Sorry, Mayor, I didn't want that to be.
Okay. We're trying to remain focused. I think everybody understands that are here tonight that they want to know more about Pine Plaza, the outcomes, et cetera. We're trying to get there. Jim, go ahead. Jim, you weren't on the list, but we're going to give you 4 minutes.
I was here so early that I don't think the list was here when I came in. Jim Neidhart, 3414 Appleton Way, Whippany. As many of you know, I live in the Eden Lane condo development, and I was at many meetings when we had the prior proposal for the warehouses. And I think that was a very nice resolution where it was approved, but with lots of restrictions, which delayed it. And now we have a different proposal, which is residential, which I think is great. My questions relate to egress in and out of the River Park development. I know normally those discussions happen at site plan, if I'm correct. However, when we looked at the last development plan, which was the industrial park, some of the biggest discussions we had with a large crowd like this centered around the egress in and out of the development. And the reason I bring it up now is because even though that's a huge piece of property, due to things like rivers and dams and other natural barriers and existing buildings like the Jewish Center on Route 10 and a whole host of other things, the egress in and out of there is very, very limited. And the citizens in Eden Lane are very concerned where on Eden Lane a potential access may happen. I looked at plans from many, many years ago from a prior development proposal, which had a normalized, what you call a normalized intersection with Boxwood Court right by our swimming pool where we go into our area. Those normalized intersections are very nice in places like congested areas like in front of the Bayer property, but on a side street, on a side road that's very quiet like Eden Lane, sometimes that's not the best type of usage. So I'm curious, in the approval that has taken place so far, has there been any discussions related to the egress, specifically on Eden Lane, and also the tract of property that you talked about where there's going to be remediation behind Oak Ridge, between Oak Ridge development and the river, the east side of the river. Is there any chance that that could be used for egress? Because that's a very narrow piece of property that really touches the Oak Ridge property. So has there been any discussions about egress to that property, given the extreme limitations?
I think council wants to answer.
Yeah, I don't
more
want to speak for
specifically than
River Park, but Jim, you raise a very important point, and I can say this, that I've heard in the discussions that River Park is looking into the very issues you raised about perhaps some alternate access.
I'm sorry, could you say that?
I think that River Park has looked at, or is looking into some alternate access sites, and I don't want to speak for them. There'll be a time, there'll be, that site plan, but it was my understanding that they are looking for alternate access, very much probably in the areas that you're talking about because of the concerns you have. So, but I don't want to speak for them if they're negotiating right now, but I think you're right up to date as far as what you're thinking about. I think that's been discussed, that they're looking into that. And if I get more information, and I'm at liberty to, if there's a property acquisition or something like that, we'll certainly let you know right away.
So the next time that this will come up for public discussion will be at site plan presentation? Or
Similar,
will
Jim, as you remember, when we did the warehousing, there were options that were given to us at that site plan time. One of them was a brand new road to keep the traffic off of Eden Lane that went from the rear part of Parsippany Road all the way out to Jefferson Road.
Right.
If you remember.
Right.
Right over the lagoons. And then there was another piece that John was negotiating, which would have connected to Apollo. And
where?
gotten you out through Apollo and then on to Jefferson from there, because we didn't want any more traffic on Jefferson as well. It's bad enough at 4 o'clock. But as Fred says, site plan options, that's what got to be looked at.
And even in advance of that, there's going to be a redevelopment plan, so there'll be an opportunity there too. First, there'll be, which is really the ordinance for the property. That issue may very well be part of that ordinance, be addressed. And then, like you said, and the mayor said, there's down the road, there's the site plan. So there's at least 2 more stops to make sure you're
I would just ask the committee to keep in mind when that comes up that the changes that were made on Eden Lane when they did the restriping and the repaving, it's horrendous. I can't believe that there hasn't been an accident at Boxwood and Eden Lane. We had a turning lane there since the development was built. You had plenty of time to make your turn at your convenience. Now the cars behind you, when you're coming from Whippany Road towards the Eden Lane development, and you have to make a left-hand turn, those cars are coming in there, they're almost rear-ending you, they're just pulling out of the way. You can see it in your rearview mirror, but you can't turn because there's a car coming the other way. There's going to be an accident there. I had asked at a prior meeting why it was changed, and I was told because of the connectivity plan, which, I mean, we were talking about in the 1980s. Yeah. I don't think it's ever going to happen. To create a traffic safety issue there for something that...
Was there a stacking lane?
Probably will never happen.
Did we have a stacking lane?
There used to be a left-hand turn lane into Boxwood Court. That was eliminated at the time. Number one, because there was a plan to have the connectivity, the bike lane, go through that section. So it was taken out at that point. That plan has kind of been delayed somewhat, but I think...
About 25, 30 years.
No.
I mean, the original plan...
No.
I mean, this is...
The connectivity plan with the bicycle lane was maybe 3-4 years ago. That's when that left turn lane was eliminated. Probably in that time frame.
It's a very, very dangerous situation.
And that could be addressed at the time of site plan, because then we'll be looking at, there'll be conceivably an intersection there from the River Park at that location.
Well,
so that could be addressed at that point, where we're also then accommodating the bike lane also.
Instead of the turning lane, now we have about a 5-foot area outside of the traffic area that's not used to anything. There's 5 feet on each side of the road, maybe 6 feet.
There's shoulder areas.
Shoulder areas that's not used, and what happens is all the traffic, when I'm waiting to make my left turn, goes in that shoulder area. That's not supposed to happen. So I strongly ask everybody that's involved, some of you are involved with the planning board,
we don't have
please
to wait
keep
for,
that
Jerry,
intersection.
We don't have to wait for site plan to look at this. We've got a safety issue. Let's look at it.
It's a safety issue.
We can look at it. We can have the police department see if there have been any accidents there.
We'll have to check with public safety.
Since then, yes, and we can look at it.
There haven't been, because I would know about it, because it would be somebody turning in there. It hasn't happened yet, but everybody knows that there's going to be an accident. I mean, you're fearful waiting to make that turn, and you're looking in your rearview mirror, deciding what am I going to do if that person behind me doesn't see me, because it's a decline, and you can't really see the traffic coming at you until you stop to make the turn. Like most people want to just make the turn, but you can't make that decision whether you want to turn into Boxwood until it's too late because it's around, there's a bend coming the other way, and you see it at the last second,
Yeah,
and they come
and
pretty
we can look
fast.
at the site distance standards there also. We can make sure that the site distance are being met.
He's on the record.
It's very dangerous. Thank you.
He's on the record. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the public portion of our meeting at this particular point.
We have one more person back there that wants to speak.
I'm sorry. We on the list? Lois?
I just have one real quick question for someone who had to leave. Asking this for Carol Paskert, who had to leave the meeting. She's asking if our seniors will get first dibs on the senior housing.
Senior housing fall under the COA rules?
It does. We
You know,
can only-
here's another.
only try.
Here's another. I'm choosing my words here. Here's another not too nice thing of COA. We used to have it with Council Affordable Housing, where people in fire service, education, and services like that had first shots in the community to stay in the community. They took that away from us. Transfer of some of these units into others, they took that away from us. So we're very limited into what we can do. The only thing I can say to you with the process we're using right now for co-housing is that you're on the list, and then you have to qualify, and then we have, who's in charge? Shelby?
Shelby Snow.
Shelby is in charge of the housing, and
So it doesn't matter if you're from town. No.
but you know what? Let me share something with you. COA. Let me share something with you, and that's that we have a lot of people that do qualify, very well qualify. Unfortunately, not fortunately, youngsters that are school age, that are in college, etc., that don't have the incomes that qualify. And I highly suggest that that's a start. That's where you go. But not for this kind of housing. I'm off on COA housing.
Right.
You're talking age-restricted housing, you're talking housing for seniors.
She's asking about seniors.
Yeah. COA's going to put a stranglehold on us on that.
Alrighty, thank you.
Yeah. Wish there was a way around that. Governor, you ought to revisit the COA rules and see what we can do to accommodate them. Use this meeting as a benchmark for you. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Anyone else like to be heard at this time? If not, I'm going to close that portion of the meeting. Motion to close?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Administrator. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to stay for the balance of this meeting, there'll be other business that the administrator is going to go over. If you're not, I'd like to take a 5-minute break from my council, who've been very good about this as well. Can we do that?
Yeah, good idea. Oh, my God.
Okay. All right, thank you for bearing with us. At this point, Mr. Administrator, you want to pick it up?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we're going to deviate from the formal agenda as you have it, and in consideration of the discussion by the Township Committee and Mr. Samrow on resolutions dealing with non-condemnation for the 2 projects that were reviewed by the Planning Board, we're going to go on record with 2 resolutions at this time. So the first is a resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover designating Block 8803, Lot 17, and Block 4001, Lot 6, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and a portion of Lot 9, as set forth on the tax map of the Township of Hanover, as a non-condemnation area in need of redevelopment pursuant to the local redevelopment and housing law, NJSA 40A:12A-1 at sequence, and this is for the Pine Plaza development based on the public hearing that was held by the Planning Board on July 23rd, 2019. May we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Have have a motion by Mr. Gallagher, seconded by Mr. Faramasca. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Cahill. And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Now, the second resolution is a resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover designating Block 3801, Lot 2, Block 4101, Lots 1 and 23, and Block 4301, Lot 6, as set forth on the tax map of the Township of Hanover, as a non-condemnation area in need of redevelopment pursuant to the local redevelopment and housing law, NJSA 40A:12A-1 at sequence, and this pertains to the River Park Business Center development. And again, it is based on the hearing that was held by the Planning Board on July 23rd, 2019. May we have a motion for approval? Motion by
Second.
Mr. Faramasca, second by Mr. Francioli. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca. Mr. Cahill.
Yes.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So approved. All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go back to the formal meeting agenda. We have public hearing and adoption of ordinances. We will be taking as a consent agenda on public hearing ordinance numbers 27-2019, 29-2019, 30-2019, and 31-2019 at the same time. They were all advertised for public hearing this evening in the Daily Record on the 17th of July, 2019. So at this time, may we have a motion to convene the public hearing on those four ordinances, 27, 29, 30, and 31.
So moved.
Motion, second. Anyone in chambers wishing to be heard on any of the four ordinances I just mentioned, 27-2019, 29-2019, 30-2019, or 31-2019?
Hearing none, motion to
Seeing none, hearing none, may we have a motion to close on the public hearings on those four
Second.
ordinances? We have a motion, second. On roll call now for adoption on ordinance numbers 27-2019, 29-2019, 30-2019, and 31-2019. May we have a motion for adoption? Motion by Mr. Faramasca, seconded by Mr. Gallagher. On roll call for adoption, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca. Aye. Mr. Cahill.
Yes.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Now, we're going to take ordinance numbers 28-2019 and ordinance number 32-2019 together because they are related in terms of the annexation to Parsippany Troy Hills. Ordinance number 28-2019 is an ordinance of the Township Committee accepting the annexation of a portion of Block 200, Lot 12 in the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills. Ordinance number 32-2019 is an ordinance of the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover in the County of Morrison, State of New Jersey, amending Section 166-108, the map, schedule, and appendices in Article 19, districts, map and schedule of Chapter 166 of the Code of the Township, entitled Land Use and Development Legislation, in order to amend the zoning map to reflect a proposed change in the municipal boundary with the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills. We'll note for the record that both these ordinances appeared in full in the July 17th, 2019 issue of the Daily Record. And while ordinance number 28-2019 is not a land use and development ordinance, it was referred to the Planning Board because of its relationship to ordinance number 32-2019. So at this time, may we have a motion to convene the public hearings on both those ordinances, since there is a reasonable nexus on both those
So
ordinances?
moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second. On roll call for public hearing, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Fermaska. Mr. Cahill.
Yes.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Is there anyone in chambers wishing to be heard on either or both ordinances 28-2019 or 32-2019? Okay, with respect to these two ordinances, Mr. Samra, myself, and Mr. Brancho are recommending, which we discussed during the executive session, that these ordinances be carried to the September 12th.
I'll make a
meeting.
motion that they be carried to the September 12th meeting for more consideration.
We have a motion to continue the public hearing to the meeting of September 12th. That motion being made by Mr. Fermaska, seconded by Mr. Cahill. So on a motion to carry both ordinances 28-2019 and 32-19 on roll call, Mr. Gallagher?
Aye.
Mr. Fermaska? Mr. Cahill?
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So moved, and we will carry to September 12th. We have one ordinance that Mr. Samrau mentioned during his presentation, the nuisance ordinance, which will be docketed as ordinance number 33-2019. It's an ordinance of the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover, establishing a Chapter 71 of the Township's Code entitled Nuisance Properties to regulate and set penalties for excessive utilization of municipal services. This ordinance will be further considered for a public hearing and final passage at the Township Committee meeting on the 12th of September at 8 p.m. here in the main meeting room. The ordinance and the notice of introduction will appear in full in the Daily Record in accordance with law. And at the meeting of September 12th, any person wishing to be heard concerning this ordinance will be given the opportunity to speak. May we now have a motion for introduction?
So moved.
So moved by Mr.
Second.
Francioli, seconded by Mr. Gallagher. On roll call for introduction, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Fermaska.
Aye.
Mr. Cahill.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So introduced. Now, the resolutions as a consent agenda. We'll note for the record that there is a request by Committeeman Fermaska and also Committeeman Gallagher that item K be deleted from the consent agenda at this time, as there are several outstanding issues.
Correct.
Thank you, Joe.
So, may we have a motion on the approval of the consent
Second.
agenda and eliminating item K? We have a motion by Mr. Fermaska, seconded by Mr. Gallagher. On roll call to approve the consent agenda of resolutions, Mr. Gallagher?
Aye.
Mr. Fermaska?
Aye.
Mr. Cahill?
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
Payment of bills on page 5, $9,043,444.70.
Move to pay the
We
bills.
have a motion by Mr. Fermaska, seconded by Mr. Gallagher. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Fermaska.
Aye.
Mr. Cahill.
Yes.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
We have the raffle applications, item number 13. Are there any questions on the raffle applications?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion on the raffle applications by Mr. Fermaska.
Second.
Second by Mr. Gallagher. On roll call to approve the raffle applications, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Fermaska.
Aye.
Mr. Cahill.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So approved, Mr. Chairman, members of the Township Committee. That clears the agenda of the Administrator Clerk, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Fine job.
Thank you, Joe.
Fine
Thank
job.
you.
Very good. Gentlemen, do you want to comment, or do you want to
What's
I
open
think
floor?
I think we have,
comment it?
we're going to open to the floor.
Okay.
And then I think we have more work to do.
Yeah, we do in conference session, that's right.
So-
Once again, gentlemen, motion open the
So
floor.
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, the floor is open. Anyone who would like to address the Township Committee can do so at this time, giving us your name and address for the record.
I was racing Judy up here. Hi, Terry Baird, 180 Parsippany Road in the Whippany section of Hanover Township. I wanted to really thank you for all the hard work that you did in doing the removal of the condemnation, because I think that that was a very difficult decision on your part, and am happy for the, the people that were here and that could have been adversely affected by that designation. So I thank you very much, and that's really all I wanted to do, is just thank you for your time and all your efforts.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Once again, I just reinforce the fact that it was never the intention of this Township Committee to use that condemnation against the retailers that were there. It had a specific purpose, but that's a moot point. At this point, we just move on. Okay? Floor remains open. Hearing none, seeing none. Motion to close?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, gentlemen, comments?
Time to continue our work.
Yeah. Just one comment. I'm very happy to say, and I think, Terry, you'd be happy, we formally signed a contract with Parsippany Animal Control. So that is now formally on the books. We're all set there, and we're off to a very good start with them.
And Ron, like Terry said, and you guys have all said, I just want to take a minute to thank Fred. It's unbelievable the amount of time we spend together. A couple nights a week I go in my pool. I've actually talked to Fred almost every night last week when I was actually in my pool with my waterproof phone case. I go, Sheila, if Fred calls, give me the phone.
You need a hobby.
So now, Fred, you know what? My hobby for 9 days is to be as good as I could with what we're doing here tonight. And Fred, thank you for everything. You're a great attorney, great for Hanover Township, and a great friend. Thank you. Great work, and great work, everybody. That's it.
I'd also like to acknowledge the planning board for its efforts in analyzing and assessing and evaluating the areas of need studies which we all spoke about tonight. It's not their purview to condemn anything. It's not their intention to condemn anything. But I thank them for their diligence in going through that process.
Okay, thank you,
Motion to
gentlemen.
adjourn.
Okay, Brian, nothing? Okay.
Vote yes on August 10th for the firehouse.
Amen.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Oh,
Amen,
there you
hallelujah to
go.
that.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right, August 10th is a charity classic, too. The ball game. Now a part of the park.
Be there.
Absolutely.